space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life, new civilizations, to boldly go where no cat has gone before. Hey, hey, Wolfpack, we're back with a surprise stream as we're ranking all the Star Trek movies on one epic tier list. Yes, all Star Trek movies, including the most recent one, Section 31. So I know some people might be a bit weirded out that we're talking about Star Trek since that's not our usual wheelhouse, but I am a huge Trekkie. I love classic Star Trek, to the point where I have not watched any new Trek because from what I've seen it looks pretty bad. But I love Star Trek and I love a lot of their movies, and because we did Star Wars a long time ago in a galaxy tier list far, far away, figured we'd do the other most popular space franchise, the rival Star Trek, one of the pinnacles of great sci-fi epics. Like, Star Trek is pretty underrated. Yeah, I know it used to be big, but has been kind of ruined by a lot of modern day stuff, but Star Trek to me has a special place in my heart, and I do love it equally as Star Wars. Star Trek is, if you don't know, a very fun but grounded sci-fi saga. I say grounded, but no, the characters were a lot more relatable. It wasn't like Star Wars with big epic destinies and whatnot. Star Trek followed a variety of space captains guiding their crew on their starship, usually the USS Enterprise, but other shows like Deep Space Nine and Voyager added some new roster, new ideas, new spaceships, basically going on adventures, resolving conflicts, and it was an episodic adventure series. Sometimes we got serialized story arcs, but occasionally it was easier to get into. Basically, a group of likable characters who you surprisingly relate with go on these wacky and sometimes dark space adventures, get into hijinks, adventures, and resolve the case and undergo some character development or lesson of the day type of stuff. However, Star Trek has a ton of creativity, a lot of great stuff, cool action in some films, and cool effects, cool spaceships, and so on and so forth. Yeah, basically, it's pretty much a fun space opera in the same vein as Star Wars, but very much different. Star Trek does have its own identity. They have spaceships, they have teleporters, they have their own races, their own ideals, their own iconic characters, and it's pretty fun. Hey Akira Yamaguchi, you made it. Glad to see someone made it. Yeah, Star Trek is sadly not as popular as Star Wars, particularly among younger crowds, because Star Trek took itself far more seriously. It was a lot more mature, a lot more philosophical, and a lot deeper than the action-oriented Star Wars, which is why it has some people who don't hate it. There's some fans, of course. Trekkies are awesome. I love Star Trek. I remember going to the old Star Trek exhibit at the Hilton, got some cool Star Trek merch. My dad got me a lot of the films, and that's what we're going to be ranking. So, sorry we're not going to be doing the TV shows because I've not seen them all, because Star Trek Discovery sucks and Lower Decks did not impress me, so yeah, we're just gonna be sticking to the films, all the theatrical Star Trek films, all the way from the 70s motion picture to, unfortunately, the new one, Section 31. So, if this is your first ever tier list, here's how it works. They're going to be ranking from best to worst movies. Gave them their own unique slots with fun Star Trek lingo. S tier, the top of the line, the top quality is live long and prosper. These are the epics. They are the greatest Star Trek films ever. In fact, they go beyond just being good Trek movies. They are perfect movies, period. Absolutely love them. Absolute masterpieces, great Star Trek movies, and most importantly, great sci-fi movies. And you will be seeing quite a lot up here, honestly. Next, they've adapted. Pretty good. They're good movies, they did the job, they're solid, a bit flawed, far from perfect, but I would definitely give them a watch. They're still awesome. Just missing that extra spark that hits Warp 5. Next, Basic Drone. These are okay. They're meh. They did the job. They had some good moments. They aren't super special, but you know, they're kind of mid. They're middle of the road. They're alright. They have good moments, but they also have bad moments. And Settle On, okay. Next, Miss the Nexus. These ones came so close to being good. These are the weak movies. These are the ones that have good ideas, have good scenes, and have some good movie moments for Trek. However, overall, a kind of a mess, kind of weak. They did not hit the nexus, we'll just put it that way. Then next is Troubled Tribble. These are bad, plain bad, not so bad it's horrible, but just lame ducks. They are the weakest ones. They are the lame Star Trek movies that people do not like. Even hardcore Trekkies do not like these. And bottom, the F tier, It's Dead, Jim. Awful. Total trash, irredeemably bad. And sadly, we will be seeing some down here too. It's Dead, Jim is the F, the failures of Star Trek. So yeah, as you can see, we got a pretty sizable roster. A lot of people tend to forget that Star Trek actually had more movies than Star Wars. Star Trek actually beat George Lucas to the 6-movie format. We have the first 6, which follow the original Captain Kirk, William Shatner, and the original series cast. Yes, they actually had 6 movies, from the motion picture to the Undiscovered Country. Then next we have 4 in the Next Generation crew, Picard's team. Captain Jean-Luc Picard, played by the great Patrick Stewart, who did actually 4 Next Generation movies. There are 4 of them. They were not as good as the original series. There is some exceptions, of course, but yeah, Picard's team got another one. Then we have the 3rd trilogy, the reboot, J.J. Abrams, the Kelvin timeline, Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto's Kirk and Spock. Hi there. Also, the first 6 were numbered when they stopped doing it. Angry Video Game Nerd complained about that back in 2006. Yeah, the first 6 Trek films actually have the Roman numeral numbers, but when they switched over to Picard's team, they kind of stopped caring about that. I guess they wanted to make it easier for general audiences to get into. Just postponed Janitor AI due to crazy filters. Aw, that's sad. And last, we also have Section 31, which is a TV movie technically, but because it's a Star Trek film, we unfortunately have to count it. So yeah, basically you have all the Trek movies that have been released up to this point. The newest one is Section 31, so if you're watching this in the future, we only have the ones we have right now. But yeah, let's finally begin this Star Trek tier list. Brought my 500 waters to stay refreshed because we do have a lot of pros and cons to talk about. Also, why couldn't they just call Generation Star Trek The Next Generation and then start a new line of sequels? Angry Video Game Nerd also said they should have done that. Oh, like Star Trek The Next Generation, First Contact, The Next Generation, Generations. That doesn't roll off the tongue so well. Alright, so since we have a new Trek film, let's get rid of the one you all know and love, Section 31, and yeah, where else is it going? It's Dead, Jim. This is the newest one. It is bad. It is bad. I'll save yourself some time. Those of you who wanted my opinions on the new one because it just came out. It's awful. It's awful. It's bad. Michelle Yeoh, a middle-aged woman, is playing a sexy femme fatale going on a heist, which has absolutely nothing to do with Star Trek other than flashing member berries to remind you of good Star Trek. Yeah, it sucks. It sucks. I can tell you all its problems in one sentence. More of Star Trek Discovery. That is all you need to know. Don't bother, it's bad. To the point where it doesn't even resemble Star Trek. Alright, with that out of the way, let's finally talk about the real Star Trek movies. Just reading some comments. No, it's like to name the sequel Star Trek The Next Generation 2, 3, etc. and just leave out the subtitles. Oh, but the subtitles actually sound so cool. I mean, Nemesis does have a nice ring to it, and I love First Contact, so yeah. Alright, so let's finally talk about real Star Trek, starting with the first movie ever, Star Trek The Motion Picture. After the TV show ended, they never gave Kirk a proper finale, so the films were kind of filled that gap. And Star Trek The Motion Picture, it's dead, Jim. Yeah, I'm putting on It's Dead, Jim. I know, I'm gonna piss off a lot of people already, but the first movie is so boring. It is boring. Everything people hate and criticize about Star Trek is in this movie. The slow-ass padding, the weird, trippy effects, the weird, trippy storytelling, the larger-than-life abstract thinking that is a bit more silly when you think about it, and also has the worst effects, the worst uniforms. Everyone looks like a 70s disco dancer, and one of the more confusing plots. Star Trek, which Teen Titans Go made a parody of this. Yeah, Teen Titans Go's parodied everything, man. They even had Freakazoid and Beetlejuice on there. Anyway, Star Trek Motion Picture, Kirk's crew is back in action and getting ready for the next phase. This was kind of Gene Roddenberry's pilot to the new Trek show he originally had planned, Star Trek Phase 2, but it got repurposed into this movie. Kirk is finally back from his 5-year mission, but he's getting back in the saddle when he needs to mentor a new team. There's apparently a lethal probe going around that's destroying everything in its path, and of course Team Kirk has to investigate it, and the story is pretty much a great big fat ripoff of 2001: A Space Odyssey, right down to padding out the trippy tech shots and all the spaceships. It's bad. It is so boring. It is so padded out and full of filler that I've had to watch this movie in parts. It was that boring. This movie is only 2 hours long, and I'm not kidding when I tell you that an hour and a half should have been shaved out of it. Space, the final frontier. Hey, Shadowlink, you made it. Don't worry, we got rid of Section 31 already on It's Dead Jim. And we're talking about the first movie, the motion picture, which I just didn't like. I didn't like it. I know it's blasphemous. It's not as bad as Section 31, that's for sure, because it does feel like Star Trek, but it is slow. It is boring. The Nostalgia Critic actually did a pretty accurate review of this. That whole scene where they're showing the entire Enterprise, the new upgraded Enterprise, and it's filming every angle. Yeah, that was not the critic exaggerating. The shot is literally that long. It is like a 10-minute montage scene showing you the new Enterprise. Oh, I didn't know they were... Of course, they were building us for the view of the front of the ship. Yeah, that was not an exaggeration on Doug's part. That was accurate. It is that long. Yes, Star Trek the slow motion picture, that's it. Had promise, but it just drags and has plenty of flaws. Yeah, basically, it is kind of a more expensive episode of the TV show, but they did not know how to fill that runtime, so it's full of a lot of padding, a lot of shots of the Enterprise, the crew walking around doing nothing, and these obvious 2001 ripoff shots showing you the abstract imagery and high tech of the evil probe going around. There's this 5-minute long scene of the crew driving the ship into the probe, and it looks cool at first. There's this model city, this weird tech, these creepy glow, kind of abyss fish kind of skeletal structure. It's cool, but it drags on forever. So many of these shots go on forever. We meet the 2 new characters, Commander Deckard, and I think her name was Ilana, the bald monk woman, who is a love interest to Deckard. They're both new characters, and surprise, they both die. In this movie, the 2 new characters are the only ones they lose on the mission. I'm hearing preview of me from Go-Go Loser Rangers or Ranger Reject, which is Power Rangers but boys style. Funny. Yeah, so they explore this probe. They find out in a twist, the probe was actually the Voyager. It called itself V'ger because it lost its memory. It's actually the Voyager, which was a real-life space probe NASA launched, but it got lost because it went too far out of range in the depths of space. The Voyager probe apparently got absorbed by something, and it grew past its programming and evolved into V'ger, some kind of cosmic being going around and it trying to study the universe, basically, because that was what its primary directive was when it was a little probe droid. And it takes over Ilana's mind or something and lives through her, and basically it's trying to return home to its creator. They find out it was Earth all along, and it wants to reunite with the creator, where Commander Deckard sacrifices himself because he wants to be with his girlfriend, and they both ascend to a higher plane of existence. I don't know, it's all very confusing. And yeah, basically, they save the day. They help the probe find itself, basically, and it stops destroying the galaxy, and Kirk's crew succeeds and are back in the saddle. Yeah, it's not good. It is lame. It is more or less kind of a reunion episode, but they stretch it out way too far and way too thin. I'm putting it on It's Dead, Jim. I know there are actually fans of this. There's a cult following for the slow motion picture, but I'm obviously not a part of it. I do not recommend this movie at all, and honestly, you could completely skip it and go right into the good movies, starting with Star Trek II. Speaking of which, let's get to the sequel, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, which, going in, live long and prosper. Was there really any doubt? Guys, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan is not only one of the greatest Star Trek movies, it is one of the greatest sci-fi cinema ever made. This is one of the movies you have to absolutely watch if you love good sci-fi storytelling. The Wrath of Khan is a pinnacle of sci-fi storytelling. It is an epic masterpiece. It is one of the best Star Trek movies ever, and it was so good that it actually made the 1,000 movies you have to see before you die list. Hey, look, it is Khan! Funny scene in Villain Pub. Yeah, that's where we get the quote, Khan. Yeah, this one is the first actual good Star Trek movie, and honestly, you can completely skip the first one and hop right into this one because it completely forgets the motion picture even happened. We get a time skip. Captain Kirk is now Admiral Kirk, and he's sort of retired, but sort of working a more office job in Starfleet. He's going on a mission where he has to inspect the troops and approve of the new USS Enterprise team led by Captain Spock. They are finally christening the new Enterprise, the Enterprise A. This is where we start getting the letters of the alphabet for the Enterprise. You get Enterprise A, Enterprise B, C, and Picard eventually gets D and E. So basically, this one has a very more interesting plot because Kirk undergoes a fascinating story arc, while we also get a more epic villain through Khan. Khan was a bad guy from the original series. Kirk essentially fought him and defeated him. Khan was a former dictator who got superhuman strength and powers, kind of Captain America style, but he used his powers for evil. He was banished into space. Kirk actually finds his spaceship. They try to work with them, but Khan turns out to still be an evil bastard who completely betrays Kirk. They have another fight, and he exiles Khan to Ceti Alpha 5, that was it. Yeah, Ceti Alpha 5. He's banished, and his superhumans are stranded forever on a dead planet where they have to basically kind of live in imprisonment, but they form their own society. They just can't contact anyone ever. However, Khan eventually makes his way back, gaining a lot more insanity and also wanting revenge upon Kirk for ruining his life. Kirk is in charge of the new ship, and he undergoes this very relatable but very deep arc where he's kind of like afraid. He's having an identity crisis, kind of a midlife crisis, because he realizes that his days as a young captain are kind of over, and he's passing the torch on to new, younger recruits, but also very unhappy in his position. Despite working hard to become admiral, he feels kind of unfulfilled, is afraid of getting older, afraid that his life doesn't have purpose anymore, and he's trying to re-spark that energy he once had. The Enterprise crew, they're all back, and they're all back to their charming, likable selves. They all get more character. Mr. Chekhov gets a bigger role this time. Mr. Spock is kind of the secondary protagonist. It's Kirk, Spock, and Khan as the real main characters in this, Khan being the villain, Kirk and Spock being the heroes undergoing arcs. Spock is now captain, and he's, again, working through his friendship with Captain Kirk. They're kind of having some struggles accepting their new positions, because Spock has great respect for Kirk and is actually fulfilled with where he is, but Kirk is not. He's not feeling it. That's kind of the thing. During this, we find out that there's a new project with one of Kirk's ex-girlfriends she's working on called Project Genesis. Genesis is a super powerful like space seed that the Transformers use. It can create new life. If you shoot this probe onto a planet, Genesis explodes, and it literally is Genesis. It creates life upon dead planets, upon dead stars, and makes like a new hospitable, livable planet with atmosphere, with plants, with crops, with everything. While they need, like, to test this Genesis device, Chekhov and his new boss are sent to explore a dead planet to use the probe on. However, they try to explore Ceti Alpha 6, but in a twist, Ceti Alpha 6 exploded, which knocked Ceti Alpha 5 off course and rendered it a horrific toxic planet. Ceti Alpha 5 is now this complete, like, desert wasteland kind of planet. Chekhov and his new captain, Captain Terrell, who's just the expendable black guy who dies, basically go explore this planet because they detect a small life force on there, and they gotta check it out to make sure it's safe to use the Genesis device, make sure there's no people or animals forming here. However, they find out, oh no, this is Khan's planet. This was the planet Khan was exiled to, and they're ambushed by Khan and his insurgents, where they torture Chekhov and ask him where Kirk is and what he's doing here. We get like one of the most nightmarish scenes in the entire Trek franchise, the Ceti eels. Oh man, these guys scarred me for life. The Ceti Alpha only has one animal left on it, the Ceti eels. Basically, their young go into your ear and devour your brain and control you. Khan uses these on Chekhov and his boss, where they're tortured and the Ceti eel implants itself in their brain. Really horrific, gruesome scene. And it makes them obedient to Khan's every command, where he asks them where Kirk is, and we find out that, oh, Kirk is conveniently venturing around space on a routine mission with the new recruits. He's with Spock on his new mission, and they have like their own team. We meet Saavik, played by the great Kirstie Alley, before she got ugly, and Scotty's nephew, I believe, is also working engineering, and Kirk's getting acquainted with them, getting used to it. We get a lot more character building on Kirk's part. Well, I will see if Wolf could see it in the anime. Yeah, Wolf is talking about an anime. Hopefully that gets out soon. Kirk is on this mission and having his like kind of midlife crisis, worried that about like reliving his glory days, and unfortunately for him, his past is about to catch up to him. Khan forces Chekhov and his boss to allow him on their ship, an advanced warship called the USS Reliant, where Khan takes over, he kicks off the crew, and he and his superhumans now have a great star destroyer to venture space, starting with stealing Project Genesis for their own devices. And yeah, basically, Khan became an instant classic villain through this movie. Everybody loves the guy who plays Khan, Ricardo Montalban. He really owns this role. He made it a lot better than his guest starring on the original series because he's allowed to do a lot more with the bigger budget. Khan and his superhuman insurgents are very lethal, deadly, crazy villains. They're these psychotic nomads that basically want to use Genesis to take over the galaxy. Khan wants to steal the Genesis nuke and repurpose it into a super weapon that can kill planets and make room for his empire. He's going to destroy Earth, destroy Starfleet, get revenge on everybody, starting with Kirk. Everyone basically feeling the wrath of Khan, and Khan is a brutal, savage villain in this. He kills like so many people. He boards the spaceship. I think it's called Deep Space 3. He, like, boards Carol Marcus's science ship, kills and tortures almost all the scientists. The only survivors are Dr. Marcus and her son, David, who, in a twist, we find out is Kirk's son from one of Kirk's many escapades, since Kirk was the hottest man in the galaxy and he and Marcus used to be a thing. And Yeah, it's a pretty fun action film. Khan is scary, he's effective as a villain. The USS Reliant is very creepy and very threatening. They give it these monster looking shots where it almost looks like a demonic creature flying through space. It's got kind of a face structure similar to House from The Haunting Hour, which gives it a lot more persona. The USS Reliant wrecks the Enterprise, Scotty's nephew dies, Kirk has to take charge basically and realizes that he's finally getting his wish, just not in the way he wanted, where he has to take command and fight Khan one last time. And yeah, it is pretty cool. This film also has one of the saddest deaths in the entire series. It's where Mr. Spock dies. Khan and Kirk have a fight across a nebula, and both their ships get completely wrecked and totaled. Massive damage, lots of casualties on both sides. Khan becomes this twisted Two-Face looking monster kind of after facing battle damage. And after basically getting his ass kicked, Khan decides if he can't win, then he'll take Kirk with him, where he sets off the Genesis to detonate and take them both out. The Enterprise is too damaged to go to warp speed and can't escape the blast radius fast enough, while Khan taunts Kirk about how in the end he'll still get his revenge. While this is happening, Spock goes down to the nuclear reactor and sacrifices himself by fixing it. Yeah, no surprise that Wrath of Khan's high tier. Yeah, definitely. We're on the best scene, Spock's sacrifice. Spock goes in against his wishes. He implants his Catra into Dr. McCoy, but I do not think that was planned for the next movie, I'm just saying. Yeah, he plants his Catra in McCoy, and since there's no time to don an Enviro suit, he goes in there and fixes the reactor while Scotty and McCoy beg him to not do it. But Spock gives them warp speed, they escape the Genesis blast, and Khan's dead. But even though the Enterprise wins, it's not without its cost. Mr. Spock dies, and we get the epic, tragic scene, Spock's death, and it is on par with Optimus Prime's death and how sad it is. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And yeah, I really love this scene. This one really hurt me as a kid, seeing Mr. Spock die, because, well, let's face it, Mr. Spock is one of the biggest faces of the Star Trek franchise ever, and Spock gets his, Optimus Prime death, where he tells Jim that he was his friend all along. You are, and you always shall be, my friend. Live long and prosper. And if that didn't make you cry, we also have the funeral, where Kirk has Spock packed in a missile. It's supposed to be kind of like a Navy-style funeral, like burial at sea, but in Starfleet, they give you a burial in space. Yeah, they give Spock a funeral, Scotty plays the bagpipes, and very effective. Spock's, out of all the souls I knew, his was the most human. And they launch Spock into space, where he lands on the Genesis planet, hinting that he won't be dead for long. R.I.P. to Leonard Nimoy, by the way. Yeah, rest in peace, Leonard Nimoy. You were the best part in all these movies. Leonard Nimoy's Spock is awesome. It is great, and it was sad to see him go. It is a death on par with Peter Cullen's Optimus Prime from Transformers the movie. I will say that. It is just that sad. And Spock's death does spark hope in Kirk, and Kirk feels good again. I feel young. And yeah, Kirk is happy, and Spock's death was not in vain because he saved his friends, and Kirk's back in the saddle. Star Trek II ends on a very mature, bittersweet ending, but that's what made it so good. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is S tier. Live long and prosper. So now we get to the sequels, of varying fan reception. And we're now on Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. Yeah, after killing Spock, they brought him back next movie, making that death scene kind of pointless, but I will say I love Search for Spock. I'm putting it on Live Long and Prosper. Yeah, I'm saying it. Star Trek III: Search for Spock, underrated. It is awesome. Yes, I know they kind of chickened out on keeping Spock dead, but bringing him back was not that bad an idea, especially because we all love Spock, and It did lead to a really awesome movie. Ironically, the movie's not entirely about Spock. It's about Kirk and his friends finally getting more spotlight. Well, I'm back. Hey, just some random guy. We're on the third movie, The Search for Spock. Basically, Spock is alive, his soul was implanted in Dr. McCoy, and his physical essence was revived on the Genesis planet because its radiation affected his coffin or something. And Spock needs to reunite his body and soul. Mr. Spock's father, I think Surak, I think it was Sarek. Yeah, Spock's dad basically comes in and tells Kirk he screwed up and he has to fix this, where Kirk realizes there's a chance to save his best friend. However, doing so will break a lot of laws and violate his Starfleet protocol. Jim wants to go back to Genesis space, which is now restricted and under watch by the science team, but Kirk says screw that and he wants to save his best friend. You could call the bad movie Star Trash, yeah. Star Trek 3 is underrated. Definitely the best of the odd number Star Trek films. Yeah, if you don't know, the odd number Star Trek films are alleged to have this infamous curse where all the odd number movies are awful and trash movies. They're the worst ones in the series, while all the even numbered movies are epic and good and cool and awesome, which is a pretty funny coincidence, I will say, but 3 I thought was pretty good. This one has one of the best villains. Christopher Lloyd is in it as a Klingon. Yeah, Christopher Lloyd plays an evil Klingon warrior. We get our introduction to the Klingon birds of prey. The Klingons find out about Genesis themselves after attacking the science team vessels, and they want to manufacture the Genesis missile too. And this is the part that some people hate about Star Trek 3 is that Christopher Lloyd Klingon is kind of a rehash of Khan. Once again, evil psychotic warrior who wants the Genesis machine, and yeah, doing anything it takes to steal it, becoming an archenemy to Kirk, yada yada, all that stuff. I didn't think it was that bad because Christopher Lloyd really owns the performance and he makes for a very fun, hammy, over-the-top villain. Isn't Google also available in Klingon? Yeah, it is. In fact, that's not just with Star Trek, it's with other franchises as well. Well, I didn't think X-Men 3 was that bad. Yeah, basically, Kirk hijacks the Enterprise back and essentially goes against his superior officers. He breaks protocol, breaks McCoy out of the nut house, because apparently they don't know about Vulcan practice and whatever, so McCoy was locked in the nut house. They break him out, they steal the Enterprise, get a fun chase scene where Scotty actually sabotaged the other ships so they can't chase after them. Yeah, I know Critic didn't like this part, but I do kind of love the cartoony sound effect the ship's breaking down made. Kirk steals the Enterprise and goes back to Genesis to reunite Spock's soul and body. However, he has a smaller crew this time. It is all just the main characters. It's Kirk, it's McCoy, it's Scotty, Mr. Chekhov, Mr. Sulu, and for some reason Uhura didn't come with them. We meet Saavik again, now played by a different actress. Saavik and Kirk's son, David Marcus, that was his name. David Marcus and Saavik are exploring the planet. The Klingons ambush their science vessel and blow up the escape ship, leaving Saavik and Dr. Marcus stranded, where they locate young Spock. Spock is revived. He's reforming, evolving, but his mind isn't all there. Basically, his soul is gone, and they have to keep him alive while the Genesis planet is falling apart. We find out Genesis is not as strong as we thought. It's basically kind of disintegrating. The planet is evolving at a rapid pace, and slowly it will burn out and be completely destroyed. But so there's now a time crunch in this movie. Also, does Wolf know Ranger Reject or Go-Go Loser Rangers? Probably not. Yeah, Wolf probably doesn't know. So Kirk and his team go there, they finally arrive, they have an epic space fight with the Klingons. Kirk eventually sacrifices the Enterprise, and this is the first movie where the Enterprise is completely destroyed. I know it's kind of polarizing among fans, but they destroyed the USS Enterprise by causing it to self-destruct, which kills all the Klingon crew invading them, leaving Christopher Lloyd kind of alone with only a handful of men left. And yeah, it's a really epic scene, not gonna lie, blowing up and watching the Enterprise fall out of space. My God, Bones, what have I done? What you had to, Jim. What you had to. And yeah, watching the Enterprise like fall and burn up in the atmosphere, really cool, especially for the time they were in. It looks really good to this day. So Kirk is now on foot. They save Saavik, and David sadly dies because the Klingons had to make him choose who to kill. David dies, but they save Saavik and young Spock. They kill the Klingons, but Kirk needs a way out of this, so he tricks Christopher Lloyd Klingon into challenging him to a one-on-one fight in exchange for saving his crew or something. The crew were taken prisoner aboard the Klingon bird of prey, while Kirk and Christopher Lloyd have an old-fashioned fisticuff fight on the dying world. Everything's falling apart. Everything looks like the Lion King final climax, and Christopher Lloyd and William Shatner get into an epic fight. And as you can guess, of course, Kirk wins. Kirk kicks Christopher Lloyd into a lava pit. I have had enough of you! And Christopher Lloyd goes falling into this lame green screen. Yep, that's it. I have had enough of you! And he sends him falling to his death, and Christopher Lloyd gets a pretty epic death. A bit fake looking, but kind of cool. And Kirk tricks the commander into beaming him on board. Kirk and his crew escape the destroyed planet right at the nick of time and make it back to Vulcan, where they reunite Spirit Spock and Spock's physical body. And we see Leonard Nimoy finally show up at the end, alive and well, thanking his friends. Jim, your name is Jim. And yeah, ending on kind of a bittersweet, if uplifting note. Spock's alive, the crew saved the day, the Klingons are defeated. However, they're definitely going to be facing some trouble when they get back home. Leading us to Star Trek IV. But yeah, Search for Spock, I love it. It's on Live Long and Prosper. It is a good movie. Not as good as Wrath of Khan, but hey, what is? It's definitely S tier. Live Long and Prosper, Search for Spock. And speaking of which, the final of the Spock trilogy, Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Didn't South Park parody that scene in their movie? South Park's parodied everything, and even Star Trek got parodied. Even Picard's famous freak out, the "No! No!" that got parodied too. Cat, your name is Cat. Classic line. And speaking of classics, Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. The crew go back home only to end up on a time travel mission to save the whales. And Captain, there be whales. This one is on Live Long and Prosper. Yes, I love all three of the quote-unquote Spock, Death, and Revival trilogy. Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, also underrated. My mom actually loves it too. My mom loves it more than Star Trek 2 and 3, but me, I'll put it underneath them because I do prefer 2 and 3 more. Star Trek IV is a lot more lighthearted. It is a more comedy sci-fi kind of movie, but a really good one. Basically, before Kirk and Spock head home to face the music, the Earth is invaded, because of course it is, by an evil probe droid that needs to make contact with a certain species. And that species turns out to be orca whales. Yes, for reals. A silly premise, but a very fun movie, I agree. That line would sound ridiculous if it was my name. Just some random guy who comments. Your name is just some random guy who comments. Yeah, Star Trek IV, it is so good. It is underrated too. I really love it. It's my mom's favorite Star Trek movie because it is pretty funny and lighthearted, and the Enterprise crew is at their best. Basically, the director wanted to prove that the Enterprise crew could entertain people without the Enterprise spaceship, basically. Show you that the Star Trek characters are what truly mattered. And they really succeeded because the characters are so entertaining and so funny in this. Basically, Kirk and the crew return in the Klingon bird of prey because that was the ship they stole. They return to face the music. Spock is alive, but not fully there. He's not the same Spock we know and love from the original series and the first two movies. Basically, he's undergoing some deja vu, some memory loss, and Kirk's trying to reignite his memory and remind him that they used to be friends. They go back to face the music only to find out that the probe droid is threatening to destroy the Earth. They make contact with the probe and find out it needs orca whales to make contact with, but the orca whales are extinct in their time period. So there's only one thing to do: time travel back to the present day to save some whales and bring them into the future to repopulate and appease this probe. Yes, I kid you not, that is the premise. The Enterprise crew time travel to save the whales. That is seriously the premise. And it is actually genuinely entertaining. It sounds so stupid when you say it out loud, but it is one of the funnest movies in the series. They go back to modern day Earth, aka modern day 1980s, where they try to find whales and basically find a way to bring the whales on board their Klingon ship and into the future. They need more fuel for their ship, they need to build a whale aquarium tank, and they need to find whales that are perfect to take back. Apparently they can't go out fishing because people will see them. However, they stumble upon an aquarium which has the last two endangered whales. And of course, these are perfect. Kirk decides that they need to help steal them. There's a pretty funny scene where Spock goes swimming in the aquarium and making contact with the whales. By the way, orcas, killer whales, are actually dolphins. Even I was shocked when I found that out. Yeah, there's a lot of great comedy in this. A lot of great comedy. Scotty trying to use an old school computer. He's like talks to the mouse thinking it's like a microphone. A lot of the characters do not understand the time period, the fish out of water jokes, because this time they're from the future where they don't understand modern day stuff. Spock knocks out some punk douche on the bus playing rock music loudly. Spock goes in the aquarium. Kirk tries to romance the aquarium doctor. There's this whale biologist there who's really attached to the whales, and Kirk tries to basically get her help. It's his love interest basically, and the whale biologist is played by Andy's mother from Child's Play, which is pretty fun casting. Yeah, Kirk and this love interest actually have a lot of decent chemistry, not gonna lie. Kirk and the whale biologist are pretty funny because, well, she's like a modern day city girl and Kirk's from a time period where he's this classical space captain, so it is pretty funny. A lot of wacky scenarios. Mr. Chekhov tries to breach into a reactor to steal their fuel for their ship, basically. They try to steal, nuclear fuel for the Klingon vessel. However, he gets captured, and it's kind of hilarious because this is during the Cold War, and they mistake him for a Russian spy or something. Mr. Chekhov gets injured trying to escape them and sent to a hospital, and we get to the high point of Spock's character arc, where Spock realizes that they have to save him. The logical choice would be to leave Mr. Chekhov since he's wounded and he'll die and he'll slow down their mission, but Spock realizes the power of friendship and they have to go back and save him, and pretty funny breaching the hospital scene. My mom really loves Dr. McCoy, and he truly shines here. Assisted living? What is this, the Dark Ages? Yeah, Dr. McCoy, funniest character of the entire original series, but yeah, seeing him at a modern day hospital and scoffing at their old tech, yeah, it's pretty hilarious. Love DeForest Kelly's Dr. McCoy. Dr. McCoy is my mom's favorite character, even in the reboot with Carl Urban. Because McCoy's so funny. Basically, McCoy, Kirk, and whale biologist girl go. They save Mr. Chekhov, get into a wacky hospital chase, and use their beaming to escape. Pretty ludicrous, but very silly and very fun. Number 4 is very lighthearted, especially after 2 and 3. I know some people don't like that, but to me it's kind of like how Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase was lighthearted after 3 kind of dark and serious mature movies. Eventually, they save the whales, they scare the hell out of evil poachers by decloaking. They beam the whales on board. Scotty was getting like an aquarium tank established. They save the whales from the aquarium. Captain, there be whales. And they time travel back just in time, but in our real climax, they have to get the whales out of the ship. Their ship loses power and it crashes in San Francisco. The whales are still trapped aboard, and the Klingon bird of prey is kind of flooding. Kirk swims down under to open the cages and release them, where they bring the whales into San Francisco. Really cool sets and a lot of cool shots, honestly. Yeah, there's surprisingly a lot of money thrown into this movie. It looks very good. Yeah, a lot of underwater action. Kirk saves the whales, and they make peace with the probe. The probe decides to spare them because whales exist on this world or something, and it falls back. But despite saving the day, the Enterprise crew do have to face the music. However, because he saved the world, Kirk is completely forgiven and pardoned of all crimes, because even though he broke some rules, he actually saved the day and saved the entire planet, because Kirk is a badass hero, and his only punishment is he's demoted from Admiral to Captain. Which is a good thing because it's exactly what James T. Kirk wanted, because Kirk loves being a starship captain. So, happy ending, and a great conclusion to a great trilogy. Yeah, Star Trek IV, it is awesome. It is awesome. Live long and prosper to the whales. Yeah, actually surprisingly good environmental message in this movie too. And it didn't come across as preachy because, well, the crew actually cared about having fun filming this movie, and it didn't get in your face about the save the whales lesson. But it's a pretty cute movie. Star Trek IV is definitely S tier for sure. Oh boy, but you know what's not S tier? Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Sorry, I need some water because there's a lot to talk about this one. Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, the one directed by William Shatner, and the one that turned Kirk into a Mary Sue, conveniently. This one is going on Troubled Tribble. Yeah, I know, I'm surprised it's not on It's Dead Jim as well. Star Trek V, The Final Frontier is the one so bad it won a Razzie Award, but honestly, I do not think it is the worst Star Trek film, especially because Section 31 completely dethroned that championship. But 5 is still not a good movie. This one, the crew get back in the saddle, and it has the infamous plot where Spock's evil half-brother Sybok comes to be the villain and hijack the Enterprise because Sybok believes he has found God. Yes, Sybok believes he has found God and wants to make first contact with the divine creator of the universe. That is, honest to you all, the plot of this movie. The villain wants to steal the Enterprise, travel to the center of the universe, and make first contact with God. And unfortunately, it did not turn out well. Star Trek V carried on a lot of the comedy of 4, but wasn't as good at it. Basically, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are all back in the saddle. They're going camping at like a national park. We see Kirk like climbing a mountain. Kirk is trying to reignite the bond he had with his bros, kind of like in the original series. However, while this is happening, we meet the villain Sybok, who was supposed to be played by Sean Connery originally, but didn't. Plus the bad blue screens. Oh yeah, they got worse in this movie. Basically, we meet Sybok, who, surprise, is Spock's evil half-brother, who is a Vulcan who expresses emotion and faith in religion. He believes he's found God and that God has like selected him as Space Jesus to recruit an entire like religious cult to help him find the great creator. Sybok rallies these like kind of Muslim terrorists, these fundamentalists, and they take over this planet, the neutral zone. A human, a Romulan, and a Klingon ambassador are all on the neutral zone planet, basically discussing peace, where Sybok takes them hostage to gain Starfleet's attention, so they'll send a great spaceship their way that he can basically hijack. This succeeds, Kirk's called back into action, and we find out this new Enterprise Kirk is in charge of. They rebuilt the Enterprise. We see it at the end of 4. We start the letters of the Enterprise, the Star Trek Enterprise A, and the Enterprise A is incomplete, basically. It's malfunctioning, things aren't working, and it's all played for wacky comedy and plot convenience, basically. The Enterprise A gets Kirk back on board, and Kirk is the only captain who can deal with these terrorists, apparently, where they head off to the neutral zone to save them. I will give William Shatner this. It is a pretty kick-ass action sequence where they basically go undercover and try to defeat the terrorists. Kirk and crew have like a bunch of squad troopers, and we get some Call of Duty kind of action. This one does have the infamous fan dance where Uhura seduces a bunch of horny virgin terrorists, basically. And yeah, I will say it's pretty funny. I don't think it's as bad as people claim, especially because Nichelle Nichols at least still looked hot back then. Basically, she seduces him, they steal their clothes, and infiltrate the terrorists. There's this really awesome action sequence of them shooting up with lasers, fighting in the neutral zone town. Eventually, they save the ambassadors, but haha, Sybok brainwashed the ambassadors into his cult, and they take Kirk and friends hostage. They really wanted to hijack his spaceship, because Sybok didn't actually want to kill anyone. He's sort of an anti-villain. Sybok's not entirely evil, but he's actually a well-intentioned extremist. He reveals to Kirk that he wants his ship, where they basically hijack the Enterprise. There's a lot of tension in the air, at least. They don't trust the villains. Of course he doesn't. Kirk knows this guy is BSing them. Spock almost kills Sybok, but couldn't because he's his half-brother, and defies Kirk's orders. They board the USS Enterprise. There's this evil young Klingon general who wants to kill Kirk and prove himself. That's kind of hassling them on the sidelines. Basically, they make it aboard the Enterprise. Sybok seizes control while Kirk tries to rebel against him. They have a jailbreak, a lot of funny moments, a lot of dead serious moments. It is a pretty crazy movie, admittedly. William Shatner directed this one, and you could tell he showed a lot of favoritism towards Kirk. This is the one where people argue that Kirk became a Gary Stu, and yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I can kind of see that. He's a lot better in the other movies because he had more of a struggle. Basically, Scotty jailbreaks them, a lot of wacky chases. There's the jet boot scene where they pass by the same floor 5 times, apparently. They make it, but Sybok finally confronts them and reveals that he's not BSing them and he's not crazy, he actually has power. Sybok wants to help them purge their pain. He wants to share their pain, remove it from them, and help them find enlightenment. And we get this very trippy scene where he shows them Spock and McCoy's painful past. McCoy has a dead dad who he never got to make peace with, and we see Spock's birth as he's always struggled between his human and his Vulcan half. Probably good reason the lead should not direct the film. Yeah, most of the time. Leonard Nimoy did direct The Search for Spock, so we know he at least did good and didn't glorify himself. Bad balance of the two, yeah. And one thing I always kind of question is, how does he do this? How is Sybok, like, showing everyone these hallucinations and visions? It's, like, never explained. It's supposed to be, oh, well, he's just Vulcan Jesus. That is quite literally the explanation. Like, I showed this movie to my mom, and she was also kind of confused at what was happening because all the guys see it. It's not just in Sybok and whoever he's trying to release the pain's head. It is like all the entire group sees these things. But yeah, apparently he affects McCoy and Spock, but Kirk, of course, is resistant to that because William Shatner directed this. He says, no, I need my pain. It reminds me I'm human. And Sybok actually accepts that and lets him keep it, but he's still taking the ship and whatnot. So, eventually, they make it to the center of the universe. They act like it's this big deal, this huge challenge, going past the Great Barrier, and it's really easy. I honestly thought they struggled more in the slow-motion picture. Yeah, they make it pass into the center of the universe very piss easy, and make it down to I guess it's called Planet Eden. That's what they call it. It's basically the desert. It's just an empty desert planet because if there's any show that filmed in the desert more than the Twilight Zone, it was definitely Star Trek. They land at like Vasquez Rocks and explore around. Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and Sybok go there so Sybok can show them the truth that he's found God, and they find the weird blue screen man. Yeah, apparently God is the cowardly lion in a blue screen. We like see his like energy head, and he's like in the center of like this Stonehenge looking thing. But why does God need a starship? Yeah, we find out, surprise, this isn't God, it's actually Satan. Yes, that is the twist. That is what William Shatner said on the commentary. The thing that was contacting Sybok and manipulating him, it's not God, it was actually Satan. Satan was trapped here after God banished him, and he needs the starship to escape. Basically, it's this weird cowardly lion energy head looking kind of thing. It's a very bad blue screen too, not gonna lie. And in a twist, we find out he was manipulating Sybok and he turns into Sybok. I never got this. Like, was it really him? His true evil lured him here, or whatever? Like, he asks Sybok that he needs his spaceship, and Kirk being the only smart guy because Gary Stu asks, why does God need a spaceship? And he just shoots him. He zaps him with his demon power, and Kirk's knocked over. Spock also defends him. Why does God need a spaceship? And he shoots them. Gotta go now. Live long and prosper, Wolfpack. Hope to see you again, but good day, good afternoon, or good morning. See you, just some random guy. Yeah, basically, the God turns out to be Satan all along, and Sybok sort of sacrifices himself to, like, slow down the demon monster. Like, Sybok repents for his sins and dies, like, absorbing the demon, sharing their pain, while Kirk and his trio basically try to make a break for it. McCoy and Spock are saved, because, of course, Kirk has to be the grand hero. The weird Satan thing chases him. If you saw Linkara's review, he did go over. There was supposed to be a rock monster in this, but the rock monster apparently was deemed too fake looking. You know, not like their great green screen. Honestly, the rock monster did not look that bad. I saw it in the deleted scenes on YouTube, and the rock monster honestly looked pretty cool. I would have liked it more than what we got. We see Satan goes into ultimate power mode or whatever and chases him. However, the Klingons show up because Spock and the Klingon general were able to make peace, and the bird of prey makes it into the center of the universe too really piss easy, and they stop Satan by shooting him in the face. Yeah, that's the big action scene. They shot the devil dead, and they rescue Kirk just in time, where they escape, and the Klingons and humans become total bros because both ships made it to the Great Beyond and past the Great Barrier and found the center of the universe, and Kirk finally finds enlightenment where he delivers our Veggie Tales lesson. Maybe God isn't out there. Maybe he's in here, pointing at his heart, because, yeah, God lives with all of us. Deep message there, Shatner. Yeah, and of course, all you know, it goes back to them going camping and finally singing Row, Row Your Boat. Yeah, Star Trek V, pretty weak film, not gonna lie. I can see why some people consider it the worst, because it is definitely one of the bad Trek films. However, there are scenes I do like and defend in this. I do think the guy playing Sybok honestly does a good job. Sybok was not that bad a villain. Unfortunately, the writing for the big twist was such a huge mess. I get where William Shatner was trying to go with for the whole religion thing. He's trying to give you a deep philosophical message, and it works to some extent, but really not all that well in the execution. I did like the twist that it wasn't God, it was Satan all along. Apparently Satan was imprisoned here by the Q, and there's this whole book explaining it, but yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms that won't make sense. Yeah, and I did like some of the action sequences. I will say, a lot of the action, William Shatner did a lot more action in this role, and yeah, I know it's to hype up his ego, but they weren't that bad. There were some good ideas here, some fun scenes, some genuinely funny moments. I did laugh at when Scotty hits his head on the railing. It's stupid, but really funny stupid. But yeah, it is a troubled movie, which is why it's a troubled tribble. I'd still take it over Section 31. So finally, on the last OG Kirk movie, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go on a restroom break, but please tell me how you feel about the grand finale to the OG Kirk while we wait. Alright, crew, I'm back. Scotty beaming back. Alright, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, the finale to William Shatner's Captain Kirk, unless you count Generations, but the end of the original Enterprise crew. Undiscovered Country, going on, live long and prosper, and I will put it above The Wrath of Khan because I really love it. Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, the grand finale to Captain Kirk and team, and what is their mission? They need to make peace with the Klingons. There's a tragic accident that occurs in the Klingon galaxy, and their empire is basically crippled and now needs help, otherwise the Klingon species will suffer. A lot of economics, a lot of depression, and a lot of innocent casualties, and the Klingons won't be able to basically take care of themselves, so they have no choice but to finally join up with the Federation, the United Planets, basically. The Klingons need to make peace if they're ever going to survive, and Kirk and team are, of course, spearheading this mission of making peace with the Klingon president. Well, in a way, 7 was the finale with Kirk, but he was barely in the movie, and that was when the Next Generation cast started to shine. Yeah, that's why I'm a bit hesitant to call it the end of Kirk's saga. But as the full finale with Kirk, Star Trek VI ends on a very high note. Yes, it does. Star Trek VI is awesome. I actually do like it more than Wrath of Khan, because I really like the Klingons. Not gonna lie, the Klingons are a really cool species. Basically, the Klingons and humans are gonna finally make peace. It really feels like it's come full circle because the Klingons were major villains on Kirk's show, so seeing them finally have peace agreements in his finale is definitely great. It is kind of the final ride. It's basically bringing Kirk and team out for one final mission before they retire, and a really kick-ass way to end things on. It is very cool. Basically, Kirk and the crew try to make peace with the Klingons. There's the evil General Chang. There's the Klingon president, the president's daughter, and the Romulan ambassador kind of guy. Basically, they try to make peace. Things seem to go well after a wacky, hilarious dining scene. But, however, the Enterprise is framed for attacking the Klingon president. His ship is shot, and 2 assassins beam aboard and assassinate the president and shoot up a lot of their politicians. I really like this scene, too. It is very creepy and very badass. There's these 2, weird astronaut-looking assassins that beam aboard, and they assassinate the president, framing Dr. McCoy and Captain Kirk for it, basically. Bye, Cat, since I have to finish math will always change a lot, just like the Incredibles. Alright, Incredibles 2, okay. See ya, Kira, don't worry, we're done with the Kirk saga at least. So, Kirk and McCoy are basically framed. It looks like they're the terrorists. Kirk and McCoy are arrested even though they tried to save the president's life. The president actually gives this very powerful dying words to Kirk, telling him, "Don't let it end this way," like implying that he really wanted peace. And Kirk actually undergoes his final character arc. He doesn't like the Klingons because the Klingons killed his son back in movie 2 and, were kind of his enemies for most of his career in the original series. Kirk actually doesn't believe in peace with the Klingons. However, he didn't want it to go this way. Kirk kind of suffers some comeuppance from the Klingon trial. We find out that they were framed and they're sentenced to Klingon prison on the ice planet, where you meet that cool mine shaft, the ice world, where it's so cold on the surface that you'll die before making it 2 feet. Yeah, very, very cool. We get to learn more about the Klingon culture, and Michael Dorn actually cameos in this movie. Michael Dorn is like Worf's great-great-grandfather, and he's Kirk and Spock's lawyer. I really like seeing Michael Dorn with the original cast, so that was definitely a high point too. This came out around the time where The Next Generation was coming out, so we get a lot more Star Trek cameos starting from this film onward. We see Michael Dorn as their lawyer, but tragically he fails, and someone gives the trial Kirk's personal captain logs, where he talks about his Klingon racism. He doesn't trust the Klingons, and he never will, not after the death of my boy, and it looks like he's guilty as hell, where he and McCoy are sentenced to life in prison on the ice mines. And they meet Iman there, David Bowie's hot wife. She plays a sexy alien girl that, of course, wants to bang Kirk. She, helps him escape from the mines, but we find out, she's actually a traitor femme fatale and was using them the whole time. My mom's favorite scene is where Iman turns into Captain Kirk and basically makes fun of him, in a meta joke. I can't believe I kissed you. Must have been your lifelong ambition. Very funny, the battle between the two Kirks. However, the Klingons ambush them, and they reveal that, they actually know Kirk was innocent because the Warden is somehow in on the conspiracy. I'm not sure how that works, why the Warden was in on it, but no, he somehow knows. Someone did indeed frame them. While this is going on, Spock is actually looking into it. He realizes that the assassins are indeed on their ship, and the Enterprise didn't actually fire upon the Klingon president's ship. Basically, we find out it was actually, what was her name? Kim Cattrall's character, the Vulcan girl, it was basically Spock's pupil. His apprentice, who he was training in his ways, was actually a racist traitor the whole time, and working against both Kirk and Spock. Kim Cattrall was actually in on the assassination. She killed the real 2 assassins, the astronaut guys, who were on her payroll. And Spock mind melds with her and finds out who's in on the conspiracy and where it's happening. And they managed to save Kirk just in time as the Warden was going to execute them, and hilariously before he was going to tell them the killer was really, and they get beamed out right then. So, Spock saves Kirk. They find out it was General Chang all along. Yeah, what a shock. Christopher Plummer was the bad guy. General Chang was really the evil mastermind because he was against forming peace with the humankind. He believed their president was weak and he had him killed and framed Kirk for it to keep the Klingons and humans divided. It was like General Chang, it was one of the Grand Admirals from the previous Star Trek movies, and the Romulan ambassador because, of course, the Romulans have to be the villains in everything. Basically, they're setting up another assassination attempt. This time they're going to kill the Earth president, Kurtwood Smith. The Earth president was trying to, salvage relations with the Klingons and humans one last time, and he holds a special summit at, Camp Khitomer, where he's trying to make peace with the Klingons and prove that Kirk does not speak for humankind, and he's trying to salvage what relationships they have. The president's daughter of the Klingon became the new president, and they're trying to form an alliance still, because the Klingons do need help. But General Chang tries to ambush Kirk in their new advanced bird of prey, one that can shoot while cloaked. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. I always thought they could shoot while cloaked, but nope, they have a Klingon bird of prey which can turn invisible and also shoot you without having to turn off the invisibility. Yeah, basically, they have a big-ass epic space battle. It's all really cool. Spock and McCoy work on a special heat-seeking torpedo, and they have their funny banter. And Sulu shows up. Sulu is now captain of his own ship, the Excelsior. And Sulu and Kirk both kick ass together. They take out General Chang and defeat his advanced superweapon, make it to the Senate, and save President Kurtwood Smith just in time. And they take out the real assassin. They save the day, and Kirk proves that he's a good man, and that peace between humans and Klingons can happen. Basically, they finally prove that humans are trustworthy. It was all a conspiracy, and they save the day. Klingons are finally part of the Federation and friends with humans. And Kirk ends his final mission successfully, where they go on one last ride off into the sunset as a final wave goodbye. Yeah, Star Trek VI kick-ass. Live long and prosper. It is one of the best movies of the series, and I do think it is better than Star Trek II, mostly because a lot more action. Christopher Plummer is definitely over the top and fun as the villain in this one. A lot more coming full circle for the original Enterprise crew. Of course, Kirk and Spock totally shine in this movie. Love it all. Love it from beginning to end. It does not have the slow moments that Star Trek II has, but it makes up for that greatly with one kick-ass final farewell. Live long and prosper the undiscovered country. Oh boy, which means now we have the next generation, Picard's team. And starting with Star Trek Generations. Oh man, I was so looking forward to this movie and then ended up just disappointed. This is the movie where Picard and Kirk, two of the greatest Star Trek captains, meet and team up for the first time. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen until the last 20 minutes of this 2-hour movie. So, basically, Kirk and Picard have to, team up to stop the evil Malcolm McDowell. There's this superpowered energy called the Nexus, which Malcolm McDowell is basically trying to chase. The Nexus, whoever gets absorbed in this, is basically transported into, this simulated heaven. The Nexus is, peace. It is utopia. It is a heaven, a personal heaven for anyone who enters it. Malcolm McDowell was, absorbed into this, but unintentionally beamed out of it thanks to intervention from Kirk, who's on the Enterprise B. He's saved from them, and he spends his lifetime trying to get back into it, basically. And during this, it opens up rather uniquely. We see now a retired Kirk, Scotty, and Chekhov christening the new Enterprise and its crew the Enterprise B, run by Captain Harriman, who is the most unpopular captain of the Enterprise ever. Basically, they're kind of there as celebrities signing off on it and endorsing it. However, the Nexus is destroying ships, and it's gonna destroy a lot of innocent people and innocent starships, where the Enterprise B is the only one close enough to save the day, where, of course, Kirk snaps back into action, takes charge, and saves those people. We get cameos from Malcolm McDowell, who would turn out to be the villain, and Whoopi Goldberg when she's Guinan. Yeah, she's Guinan, and I believe it's her in her younger days, but because they all don't really change in age, it's very hard to tell. Well, I'm back once again. Hey, just some random guy. We're finally on the Next Generation crew, and Generations, I'm gonna put on Troubled Tribble. Yeah, I know, ironically, it didn't make Miss the Nexus. I was very disappointed by this movie because it's very boring, and it completely blue balls us on Kirk and Picard meeting. It is more or less the Next Generation's movie with Kirk guest starring at the beginning and end of the film. The search for me is over, yeah. If you weren't here, we talked about the original team's films. We're finally finished with that. Star Trek 6, 2, 3, and 4, all on Live Long and Prosper. the slow motion picture in Section 31 at It's Dead Jim, and Trouble Tribble, The Final Frontier, and Generations. Generations is a bore. It is also boring, but a little more entertaining than the slow motion picture because the Next Generation crew basically saved most of this film. Agreed, it's basically the most disappointing of the movies. Not a strong start with the Next Generation, yeah. Basically, they hold off on Kirk and Picard meeting, even though they're on the damn poster together. They fake you out and bait and switch us. It is basically using Kirk's popularity to make you think he's going to be a major part in this, but nope, it's really Picard and Data with the annoying-ass emotion chips as the stars of this movie. Oh yeah, that's another point against it. Data is trying to fulfill his arc of becoming human and relatable amongst living species, and he gets the infamous emotion chip in this movie, which would actually be salvaged as a good plot point in the sequels. Unfortunately, it is garbage here, because Data is annoying. He is annoying. Oh my gosh. Like, I hated him. I could not rewatch this movie because his scenes are so cringy, so unfunny, and Brent Spiner really hams it up. I'm sure he was having fun, but good lord, was he not funny. Like, yes, Geordi, I don't know, Mr. Tricorder, is it? I hate this. It's terrible. Yeah, Data sucks in this movie, not gonna lie. The funniest part Data has is when he pushes Dr. Crusher in the water. Basically, Kirk saves a destroyed ship that almost falls prey to the Nexus because while the Nexus can absorb people inside of it, it is completely lethal to everything else. It destroys technology, it destroys like non-sentient matter basically, and he saves Malcolm McDowell and Guinan. They're part of like this expedition ship, and he saves them indirectly. They think Malcolm McDowell's crazy and taser him, and Kirk is unfortunately hit by the Nexus while trying to save the engineering. He gives reign of control back to Captain Harriman to prove himself. Kirk goes down to engineering to fix it, but it gets zapped by the Nexus, and we're led to believe that Kirk is dead. Yeah, you really got us, movie. William Shatner died anticlimactically off screen. Yep, Kirk is dead. Yeah, spoilers, he's actually alive because the Nexus is still out there. So we get a time skip to the Next Generation crew, where it pretty much becomes their movie. It is mostly Picard and his crew getting into wacky hijinks and kind of doing like a wrap-up for the original show. I know All Good Things was the best finale, but it's kind of like the end of the Enterprise D's story, basically. We see Worf gets promoted, I believe, to lieutenant. They have like a hazing ritual on a pirate ship or something. It's pretty fun, even though the holodeck has always been kind of weird. Yeah, they throw a party for Mr. Worf. Data accidentally pushes Crusher in the water, which is a bad thing. It was actually funny. Like, I know it's supposed to be Data was mean, but it's funny. Tell me you didn't laugh at Beverly being pushed in the water. Data undergoes his arc of getting the emotion chip, and it makes him an annoying wuss. Yeah, it is not fun. It is one of the biggest negatives of this film. And Picard finally gets a new arc, and he sort of undergoes a similar arc that Kirk goes. He's having a midlife crisis, questioning whether it was smart of him to choose career over a family life. Picard loses his brother and his nephew. His brother and nephew, they burned to death. They were like burnt in a fire, meaning that Picard is now the last member of his family tree, and he has this major identity crisis, questioning whether he made a good choice choosing his career over, finding a girlfriend, having a life, having kids to call his own, because now he's like the last of his family, and he's feeling very lonely, having this huge identity crisis, especially because his Enterprise is going to finally be checking out. And I will say this, I did like it, but Patrick Stewart's like the greatest in everything, even that god-awful first season of Picard. So yeah, Picard has a midlife crisis. He's questioning whether he made the right choices, and it's supposed to basically mirror Kirk's story arc from the good movies, because Kirk also had the question if he made a good decision of, sticking on to Starfleet or leaving it eventually and having a life. And they pick up Malcolm McDowell, who, surprise, is not a helpless civilian, but now the twist villain. And I actually thought Dr. Soren was alright as a villain. Yeah, he's not the best, but Malcolm McDowell definitely gives it his all. Apparently Malcolm McDowell hated this movie, and can't say I blame him, but he was definitely not a negative mark against it. So basically, Malcolm McDowell is trying to get the Nexus back. He wants to get back in the Nexus because he was there briefly until Kirk beamed him out. He wants to basically get himself back into heaven, and to do so, he's doing some underhanded scheming. He has a device that will send the Nexus flowing his way. However, the catch is, it will completely destroy an inhabited system of innocent people, and Dr. Soren doesn't give a crap. He doesn't care. He's going to sacrifice as many lives to get his own selfish happiness. He teams up with the Dura sisters, villains from the Next Generation show, who finally die in this. They finally get a satisfying final fight against the Enterprise D in an epic space battle. Yeah, the space battles are definitely alright in this one. The effects have definitely gone up. I believe I speak for all of us when I say the best moment of Generations is the crashing of the Enterprise. The Enterprise is horribly damaged from its fight with the Klingons. They're falling right out of the sky, and they separate the saucer section and crash land on like an Earth-like planet, and it looks really cool. Like, not gonna lie, the effects of the Enterprise D crashing on, like, a planet, it looks awesome. It is very good. The effects in CGI have held up well. It looks so realistic. Speaking of Malcolm McDowell, have you seen A Clockwork Orange? Yes, I have. I've seen A Clockwork Orange. I do like it, but if you're hoping for a review, don't hold your breath. There's some things on there that I don't think I'm going to be able to talk about on YouTube. Don't you hate it when a character gets replaced with another who's just much like them? Yeah, that's kind of what happens in this movie. So, Picard and Dr. Soren have this big epic fight on Dr. Soren's weird, station, his science station. He crawls through, a hole in the force field. Yeah, looked pretty ridiculous. He's, trying to squeeze in through this thing. And kind of weird, the force field can't cover a hole in the wall, but whatever. He squeezes through and he fights Malcolm McDowell. However, Picard actually fails. Malcolm McDowell gets the Nexus, but at the cost of all life in this solar system they're in, including the Crash Enterprise. Picard actually makes it into the Nexus with Malcolm McDowell, and he finally gets his dream, but he realizes, no, this isn't real. He still has his friends who died without him. And through a very weird plot contrivance, Whoopi Goldberg's Guinan shows up. She's a shadow or something, and somehow knows Captain Picard still, even though she was in the Nexus a long time ago. But yeah, a shadow of Guinan comes in and basically acts as his conscience, telling him what really happened and that he still has a chance to save the Enterprise, because the Nexus can literally do anything. It can send you back and reverse time if that's what the person inside it wishes. Yeah, the Nexus can really do anything as the plot demands. However, Captain Picard realizes he can't stop Dr. Soren alone because Malcolm McDowell's too tough. So he finds out Kirk is here, and we finally get the meeting between Kirk and Picard, like in the last half hour of the movie, and once again, it is pretty boring and uneventful. Yet this is a meeting between William Shatner's Kirk and Patrick Stewart's Picard, and it is very boring and downplayed. And after all that build-up, bringing Kirk and Picard together, what do? Show them making breakfast. Whee! The greatest Starfleet captains making eggs. Yeah. Basically, Kirk has been here in the Nexus living his happily ever after, completely chilled, and apparently reversed all his character development, all that talk about how he needs his pain and needs responsibility and should live life like every other normal person. Total 180. I love the Nexus is great. Yeah, Kirk now likes the Nexus, but eventually Picard gets to him, talking to him, and Kirk realizes that it's too perfect. There's no risk, no danger, no obstacles to overcome. it's an easy win. It's too laid back. He basically gets whatever he wants without feeling like he accomplished anything. And Kirk and Picard have this heart-to-heart where they talk about how they struggled with choosing a life versus choosing career. The Nexus gave him that missing spark he was missing. He wanted to live a fulfilled life, and he had time to do that in the Nexus because space and time are completely irrelevant here in heaven. Yeah, it's honestly a good idea where they're coming from to get Kirk out of here, but their first meeting is just unimpressive. It is like the biggest letdown of this franchise ever. The two greatest captains of Star Trek, and they completely underplay it. It feels too restrained and too boring. Basically, Kirk realizes Picard's right, and he has one last shot at being a great hero because deep down Kirk realized he did like being captain of the Enterprise and made the right choice choosing his career because it's what he wanted. Even though he would like to have a family, it gave him the fulfillment in life he wanted. So Kirk and Picard finally team up to fight Malcolm McDowell. And to the credit, it is a pretty suspenseful, intense action sequence. It finally gets exciting, and we see Kirk and Picard fight Malcolm McDowell, stop his evil science device from bringing the Nexus to him. And unfortunately, this great moment gets ruined when Kirk dies. Yeah, Kirk dies in this movie, and we get the infamous trope, they dropped a bridge on him. That Insurrection poster is awesome, just saying. Yeah, it does look pretty cool. It fooled us all into thinking the movie was great, but yeah, definitely a better poster. Kirk dies under a bridge, Malcolm McDowell gets blown up, and Picard makes peace with Captain Kirk. Kirk, tells him, don't give up your life. The greatest moments of my time were living in that chair. Talking about the Enterprise, and this finally helps give Picard, the push he needs to stick with what he likes. And Kirk tragically dies, and Picard gives him a burial on the planet. Not sure if he contacted Starfleet about it. Do people know that Kirk came back and heroically sacrificed himself to save the galaxy? Guess not. And Picard basically makes peace with Kirk, buries him, gives him an honorable funeral, and he finally accepts that he loves being a starship captain and accepts his role. He goes back and Data apologizes to Dr. Crusher for being a dick, and she sort of helps him get control of his emotion ship. Oh, and how can we forget? Spot the cat survived. Spot will live. Yeah, Spot the cat makes a cameo. He survived the crash, apparently, and is reunited with Data. And Data finally expresses love for the first time for his cat, showing you he's on the way for his emotional peace and whatnot. And yeah, that's kind of where the story ends. Generations, total disappointment. I'm sorry, it was boring. It was lame. It's almost more boring than the slow motion picture, but I did like the bits with Malcolm McDowell and some of Patrick Stewart. I do think his arc is relatable, but not very satisfyingly tied up for a film. Kirk should have had a better send-off. Yeah, that's what everyone agrees. It was much better than the original death, where he's just shot in the back by Malcolm McDowell. They dropped a bridge on him, but hey, at least Kirk went out saving a whole galaxy of innocent people. So, better than what could have been, but that's not saying much. Yeah, Kirk deserved a lot better send-off, and honestly, it should have been about Kirk and Picard teaming up all movie. It shouldn't have just been, part of the movie, because everyone was looking forward to seeing them two share the screen, and it's a huge letdown. Generations is a letdown. I do not recommend it. However, it's not as bad as the slow motion picture in the god-awful Section 31, so we'll give it that. But it is a troubled tribble. It's just sad that a movie with great action sequences fails to be a good movie. Totally agree. Thankfully, we're on next movie, Star Trek First Contact, and it's going on Live Long and Prosper. Yeah, I will put it above the original series movies, because This is one of the greatest entries in the franchise. The Borg are back, and Picard finally faces his trauma of when he was assimilated by the Borg. For those of you who don't know, the Borg are that evil cyborg race that assimilate all life into their collective because they believe they're making a perfect species. Excellent redemption. Hey, Jon Snow! Jon Snow, you made it! A huge improvement from 7. Oh yeah, huge improvement and then some. This is not only the best Next Generation movie, I think it's one of the best in the series. I love this one and watch this one all the time. Basically, it's a follow-up to one of the greatest episodes, or two-parter episodes from The Next Generation. Picard was once assimilated by the Borg, and his trauma is coming back when the Borg re-rise as a threat. The Borg have decided to take the gloves off, and are now full-blown invading the Earth. They're heading their way to planet Earth, and the Starfleet is doing all it can to stop them. We see Mr. Worf came back. He was on Deep Space Nine, and he's driving that small, weird ship. Yeah, Mr. Worf comes back. They kind of poke fun of how Worf keeps coming back, even though he should be on Deep Space Nine, but nope, he's conveniently available for these movies. Pretty cute in-jokes, not gonna lie. Picard is having, like, bad dreams, nightmares, suffering PTSD from his assimilation in the Borg. Picard was once a Borg drone until his crew saved him and freed him from the collective. He got his mind and body back, but the memories still haunt him. There's still a part Borg haunting him. And basically he has to reface his inner demons. It's kind of a Moby Dick style story. The Borg are his whale, and he's the Captain Ahab. Picard can't separate getting closure and getting revenge upon the Borg. The Borg are invading Earth. They manage to stop them, supposedly. However, the Borg Queen is now the main villain. Yeah, we introduce a controversial character, the Borg Queen, the hive mind behind the Borg, the speaker of the drones. This was kind of a controversial character because it meant there was like a single unique Borg when they're all supposed to be one mind connected together. Personally, I think it still works. She's more so like a coordinator of the Borg. She's like guiding them, telling them where to go, and kind of serving as their like director amongst the Borg, but she's still a part of them. Alice, what's her name? Alice Krieg, Alice Eve, like, plays the Borg Queen. Yeah, we actually meet a sexy Borg before 7 of 9, the Borg Queen. And yeah, she's pretty hot. She's a badass, sexy, evil, dark queen kind of villain. She gets to express emotion because she's trying to seduce people into joining the Borg. The Borg Queen is one of the best villains in the series. Yeah, I will say she is better than Khan, but that's because she got to do a lot more. Basically, the Borg realize that they can't defeat Starfleet, so they travel back in time where the Enterprise E follows. They travel back in time to the very first warp speed space launch by Zefram Cochrane, the founder of, you know, warp drive spaceships. Zefram Cochrane is like with this weird shanty town of scientists. They're recovering from World War III, and Cochrane is basically trying to fix their technology and built a new spaceship. The Phoenix, that was it, the Phoenix. He built his own spaceship, which is capable of warp speed. They can finally leave Earth and traverse across the stars. The Borg go back and basically want to eliminate Cochrane's invention, so warp drive is never created, and Starfleet will never be founded or inspired by him. Fun fact, allegedly Zefram Cochrane was going to be played by Tom Hanks, but Tom Hanks apparently chose a different movie at the time, and Hanks actually went on interview saying it was one of his biggest regrets ever because First Contact was so cool. Yeah, Zefram Cochrane, the guy playing him is pretty funny. There's a light-hearted story and a dark story. The Borg are part of the dark story, while Riker and Deanna Troi are part of the light-hearted story. Basically, the Enterprise E travels back in time, they seemingly defeat the Borg, and they have to make sure they undo all the damage and make sure the flight of the Phoenix goes off without a hitch. Riker and crew are beamed down and disguise themselves as fellow civilian astronauts and scientists. Now, that would have been a difficult what-if scenario there. Yeah, Tom Hanks as Zefferman Cochrane. Or the Borg winning. Yeah, the Borg traveled back in time to basically assimilate the Earth and take over the world before, Starfleet was ever made, fighting humanity at its weakest point. They took the Austin Powers advice of go back and kill him while he's on the crapper. Yeah, basically the Borg want to defeat their enemy before they're at full strength. They're in their weakest state right now. The Borg actually survived their battle and beamed aboard the Enterprise E, but are cloaked and incognito. We slowly see the Borg Queen and her troops taking over the ship, and it is really scary. The Borg are at their scariest, most frightening scenes in this movie. We see like red shirts checking out strange occurrences in the engine room, only to be horribly killed and assimilated. Like, the Borg are slowly hijacking Picard's own ship, like a disease poisoning a body, and Picard decides he's going to fight and kill the Borg once and for all, and Picard is not very well during this. It's very clear he's undergoing some sanity slippage. The stress is getting to him, and his memories, his past with the Borg, are haunting him again, and he very much wants to kill the Borg. He's getting joy out of murdering drones. He's not bothering even saving his own friends when they're assimilated. He mercy kills one of his young recruits. Meanwhile, there's like a lighthearted plot on planet Earth where Zefferman Cochrane is not this great hero. He's actually this pathetic drunk dude bro. And Riker, Geordi LaForge, and Deanna Troi are trying to get him to shape up and become the good, inspirational man they know and love. And yeah, he's kind of weirded out by them, how they all treat him like he's this great man like Christopher Columbus or Einstein or something. He's very much upfront about how he's doing it for the money. He's like this blue-collar Al Bundy type of guy, and it's very funny, not gonna lie. I do think they succeed at balancing out both the light-hearted, funny B plot and the dead serious Borg plot. Very, very fun stuff. Yeah, Deanna Troi gets like totally wasted in this movie, and Riker eventually loses his patience and gets fed up with Cochrane running away, and he actually phasers him, like shoots him and falls in the river, like pretty much forcing him to shape up. Meanwhile, on the ship, Picard and crew are fighting the Borg and a lot of badass action scenes. The Borg are scary. The Borg are very lethal. Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart really wants to be an action hero, and he really succeeds in these movies. He kicks ass. They're like killing Borg. He shoots a Borg with a machine gun at one point, going nuts on them. We find out one of Zefferman Cochrane's buddies, Lily, is on the ship. She's being treated for like injuries. However, before they can send her back, she's like ambushed by the Borg. We get a cameo from the Doctor. Robert Picardo is actually in this, and yeah, I really love him. I love the Star Trek cameos so much. Yeah, the Doctor, the emergency hologram appears, and Dr. Crusher uses him to distract the Borg because, he's a hologram, he can't be hurt, and Robert Picardo is always funny. He's very great seeing the Doctor from Voyager appear in this. Yes, he was the EMH at the time, so it did make sense. So, Dr. Crusher, they escape, but they lose Lily, and during a Borg ambush, like, Picard loses Data, and he ends up alone, where he manages to bump into Lily, and they have a lot of cute chemistry together, not gonna lie. I actually thought Lily was one of Picard's best love interests. She's actually funny, she's snippy, and she has this fun chemistry with Picard as they try to escape the Borg. Apparently the Borg do not attack you if they don't consider you a threat, and like Lily's obviously scared shitless of these creepy cyborg zombies walking around, while Picard is like trying to guide her. Picard manages to take out the Borg drones, and he finds out that they're turning his vessel into their warship so they can basically shoot the Phoenix mid-flight. This is the Borg Queen's ultimate plan. She wants to destroy the Phoenix so they don't have the warp speed that will create their first contact, basically, because the Vulcans are supposed to see that humanity has developed warp drive. So Data has been captured, and he undergoes his his emotion arc. He wants to become human and not a machine, and the Borg Queen kind of seduces him and sexes him up. There's very creepy body horror too. Like Data has like human skin put on him. We get to see Brent Spiner without the makeup for a brief second. Very cool. Very unique sci-fi storytelling. Data is hesitant at first, but slowly falling for her charms and realizing that she can actually accomplish his dream of becoming human. And yeah, Data's slowly turning to the dark side. Meanwhile, the Enterprise crew are having an epic war with the Borg. Awesome action scenes. There's this fun scene where they're trying to destroy the laser being built on the Enterprise dish. They're having like a fight in space. They're walking right on top of the Enterprise. Neil McDonough dies horribly and becomes assimilated. And we get Worf being in action, and he's cool. Assimilate this! And he blows them up. Really cool stuff. However, it's very abundantly clear that Picard is losing it. He is prioritizing killing the Borg over the safety of his crew. It's very clear that the Borg are winning the war and taking over his ship, and they can't win. And Picard is willing to sacrifice his own troops, his own Starfleet cadets, to beat the Borg. And Lily finally calls him out. Calls him what he is, a Captain Ahab hunting his whale, and we get Picard's greatest freak out, the best scene, the no! And he's like shattering his shelves and glass. Very epic acting. Patrick Stewart really sells this role. Patrick Stewart's great in everything, even that god-awful Picard show, the first 2 seasons. And he eventually realizes that Lily's right. He has lost control of himself, his emotions, and letting the Borg cloud his judgment. He decides that Lily's right, that he needs to save his crew. So they decide that they're going to self-destruct the ship and abandon it and make new lives on Earth. Everyone pretty much agrees with this and goes in escape pods to Cochrane's camp. However, Picard senses Data is still alive and he has to save his friend because now Picard cares when it's a main character on the line. He goes back to save Data while the Enterprise crew completely retreat. The Borg are taking over the ship now successfully, and Picard finally confronts Data and the Borg Queen in an alien queen kind of style confrontation. Basically, he faces off with the Borg Queen. Data reveals that he's evil now because the Borg Queen's hot and he wants to do it with her more. The Borg Queen kind of acts like a jilted ex-girlfriend around Picard. It's kind of funny. Like, she acts like, oh, Data's her new better man now. She traded up after Locutus ditched her. Pretty funny, honestly. And basically, the flight is happening now. Riker and Geordi are on board the Phoenix with Zefferman Cochrane. It's this nuclear missile converted into a spaceship. The Phoenix takes flight and it takes launch. However, the Enterprise almost shoots it down, but misses, where we get our twist that Data was still good all along, and he sabotaged the Borg, where we get an epic fight. He, like, poisons the entire room with death gas. The Borg Queen tries to take Picard out with her, and she falls to her death and disintegrates horribly. Very graphic death, too. Not gonna lie. The Borg Queen dies horrifically, getting disintegrated, loses all her flesh. Data gets battle damage, loses all his human flesh that she constructed for him, and Jean-Luc Picard makes it down once the gas is cleared and snaps the Borg Queen's spine in half, killing her. Which you would think would be an end to the Borg as a whole, but no, we got a terrible second season of Picard to ruin the Borg for you. But yeah, the Borg are defeated, the Queen dies, all the drones short circuit and lose connection, everyone is safe, the Phoenix flight happens without a hitch in their plans, Zefferman Cochrane plays his fun rock music, and Picard and Data are reunited, saving the Enterprise and time itself. They make peace, and we find out who made first contact with Earth. It was the Vulcans, where we see young Spock come down from a Vulcan scout ship. The Vulcans were impressed that the humankind have finally made a functional spaceship capable of warp, and decide to make first contact with them. Where, as we all know through Archer's show, the Vulcans and humans had good relationships from that point on. Yeah, the Vulcans make first contact, befriend Zephyr Cochrane and humankind, and basically start the beginnings of the Federation. You know, until we get Archer's show, which showed you some snags in that plan, but that's a show for another time. And Picard and team return home, and I guess time traveled back to their modern time, because time travel is now just that easy. But yeah, first Contact, it is awesome. It is one of the best movies of Star Trek, and I do like it a lot more than the others, not gonna lie, because it's just so fun, and the Borg are really creepy villains. Picard finally gets a great character arc in these movies, and the Borg are very effective villains. The Borg Queen is pretty hot. Data actually gets a good story arc revolving around his stupid emotion chip for once. Imagine a Star Wars and Star Trek crossover. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. I like joking that my friends that Captain Kirk could beat Kylo Ren, but that's because Captain Kirk is awesome. Yeah, First Contact, awesome. Awesome makeup, awesome effects, awesome action, awesome storytelling. First Contact is one of the best movies in the saga, and yeah, I will put it above Wrath of Khan and The Discovered Country. Very great Next Generation movie. Alright, we're on the final 5, so we're gonna talk about the next one, Linkara's least favorite Star Trek movie, Star Trek Insurrection. Oh boy, gonna go on a restroom break, but we got a lot to talk about, so feel free to post your comments about Insurrection. Alright, I've returned. Sigh. Oh boy, another bad one. Insurrection. That's kind of what matters for a movie, if it's fun and enjoyable. Yeah, First Contact definitely is. I've actually considered reviewing First Contact. One, I love Star Trek, and two, it's the only one that feels like a horror movie, so First Contact definitely feels like it's something up our alley, especially more than the other ones. It's also sad that a movie with a great poster or character designs is not very good. Like some of the Goosebumps monsters who looked good but were wasted in an episode. Yeah, I know that feel. Shadowlink, but that poster's pretty cool. I mean, granted, a lot of the posters are cool. Yeah, even Nemesis has a kick-ass poster, too. And Into Darkness has a kick-ass poster, but we'll talk about that later. Insurrection. This is the one where Picard goes off the grid and defies Starfleet. Picard's now a rebel against his superior officers. Okay, so the real story is there's this planet inhabited by a species known as the Baku, who have a special, radiation around their planet, which can reverse aging and make people immortal. Yeah, the planet is, literally an Eden. It has some special chemical in, the atmosphere, and Starfleet wants to kick these people off their land to take that chemical to help in, medical science, basically. To help the galaxy, because this could save so many lives and improve everything. human life expectancy can go even higher thanks to this. Like, you could live all the way to 500. That's how powerful this chemical is. They're working with a species known as the Sona, these weird stretchy face guys, one of them played by F. Murray Abraham, who's obviously our twist villain. It's a shame that some of them were not good movies. Yeah, we got some bad ones down here already. Insurrection, they want to basically kick the people off their land and take basically imperialize their world and harvest their stuff. You know, in a similar vein to real life atrocities, like kicking Native Americans off their land. And yeah, it really fails. It really fails. This is what turns Picard against them. Data malfunctions and Picard is summoned to stop him, or they stop him through song in a very weird sequence, but, you know, to their credit, the guys are good singers. They save Data. He reveals he was malfunctioning because of some technology that was here. We find out that the Sona are going to literally kick the Baku off their planet overnight. They made like a holodeck ship, which looks exactly like their village, and they plan to force these people off their own planet so they can take the chemical by force. They were not given permission because these people don't know about them. Crazy how this is one of those franchises where the first is considered the worst. Same thing with the Purge series. Yeah, it is pretty funny. Generations was the first one for the Gen crew, and it sucked. And the slow motion picture really sucked. They basically want to kick off the people from the planet, and this is why Picard defies orders. It's his insurrection. Picard is famous for being the by-the-book cop. He is the one most faithful to Starfleet, always follows the rules, always follows command. He's a lot more faithful to his superiors than Kirk and Janeway are, and basically he's rebelling, starting his insurrection. Picard befriends the Baku and feels pity for them. He falls in love with Mother Gothel, and he wants to help them because he realizes kicking people off their own home is wrong. And as Linkara pointed out, this is why it fails. The Baku do not own this planet. They are not natives to it. They don't inhabit it. They were explorers themselves who took over this world as their own. They were explorers who basically moved here, took it over, realized its properties, and claimed it as their own. The Baku don't own Jack, and basically they're shaming Starfleet and the Sona for wanting this planet because it's not theirs to take when it's not really theirs either. It is complete hypocritical, it is complete bullcrap, and it is a very poorly done, preachy message type of story where the Baku are basically the Native Americans. Kind of funny when you remember there was a next gen episode where Picard kicked Indians off their own planet too, and he didn't care then, but now he suddenly does. Yeah, also really poor continuity. Where to put Insurrection? I almost want to put it on It's Dead, Jim, but I might show mercy and put it on Troubled Tribble. Yeah, I'm sorry, Linkara. I do not think it is the absolute worst beast of this franchise. It does have good moments. I will defend that. I love the Enterprise crew kind of feeling the effects of the planet and acting a lot younger than how old they really are. Like the Picard team kind of get puberty-ish. Like, Deanna Troi and Riker re-spark their romance in this movie. Geordi regains his sight back, and honestly, it's a really beautiful scene that he thought his eyes were malfunctioning, but what he realized was he actually could see again, and he wanted to see the sunrise for one last time. Really actually good scene. LeVar Burton used to be so cool before he went crazy. And I do like Picard. Like, Jean-Luc Stewart had a lot of high energy, especially in this movie. Picard, like, gets his mojo back, starts acting like a young man. They all listen to music. Worf gets, like, puberty, and really enjoyable, honestly. I do think that part is definitely a fun element to this film. Unfortunately, it came packed with a really mediocre, terribly written story. Basically, we find out that the Sona were also relatives of the Baku. They were a part of their same group of settlers who lived on this planet, but the Sona believed they should have had technology and share this with the rest of the universe, so the Baku exiled them, so the Sona went out on their own and are unfortunately suffering like the effects of rapid aging. They're like dying, they're getting older, they're losing body parts, and undergo a lot of these creepy body horror surgeries to basically stay alive. The Sona kind of look like Cenobites without any of the daggers. The Sona are actually using Starfleet to get revenge on the Baku for exiling them, but really all this does is kind of make the Sona look like the victims. They wanted to help people, and they actually wanted to return to their planet at first, but the Baku exiled them and denounced them and left them for dead. So the Sona feel like they're kind of justified in their revenge, which is another problem. It's supposed to mean the Baku are supposed to be the innocent saints and the Sona are supposed to be evil, but it really feels like the opposite. The Baku feel like they're the bad guys, while the Sona race feel like they're tragic villains in all of this. Yeah, F. Murray Abraham was really this wise sage who got exiled from the planet, and he wants to get revenge on the people and take all this stuff. And yeah, just because, like, they're so desperate to make you hate these guys that for no reason he completely betrays the Starfleet Admiral and kills him with his face-stretching machine. It looks pretty bad. It's terrible CGI, and honestly kind of an out-of-nowhere betrayal. But yeah, F. Murray Abraham's the twist villain, even though he kind of did nothing to hide it. He's going to force everyone off the planet. He's like, sends probe droids, and I do like the action scenes in this. Insurrection, like, say what you will about the garbage plot, but the action scenes are pretty cool. We see, like, Mega Man drones are, like, flying down and shooting, like, beaming darts at them. Pretty crazy stuff. Sorry. Picard and friends, like, form a resistance. He rebels against Starfleet and tries to save the innocent Baku. He gets this weird romance with Mother Gothel, and apparently they try to tease that the Baku have evolved to godlike beings because she slows down time, like, on her date with Picard. Like, we see a hummingbird moving in slow-mo and the wheat, like the grass, flying real slowly in the wind. It's supposed to be a magical moment, and I will say this, I also like the soundtrack. The soundtrack is really cool in this movie. There's like this almost mystical, kind of beautiful, like Christian kind of theme going on. I just wish it complemented a better story, because yeah, one of the biggest jabs, okay, one of the biggest scratches of this movie, which it suffers, is the Baku are not likable. They're not sympathetic, they're not well written, and they are not in the moral right, which is why people hate this movie. Linkara is totally justified in calling this one of the worst movies of the saga. Personally, I think Slow Motion Picture and Section 31 are far worse. Insurrection had good moments and some good ideas, but ultimately, it failed in its execution. It is like Twilight Zone 2, the 2000s Twilight Zone bad. Eventually, Picard gets captured by the Sona and realizes the truth that the Sona and Baku are related. He confronts them on this, and he manages to convince like a few of the reluctant Sona, like the F. Murray Abraham's second in command, who I forgot was also a character in this. He actually feels sympathy and regret for doing this and doesn't want it to come to bloodshed. Picard reaches to him where he helps him jailbreak, and they do some weird ship hopping kind of plan where they beamed F. Murray Abraham and his goons on board the holodeck and took over his mothership. It's very odd. It's a weird kind of climax. They basically ship hop and dump F. Murray Abraham on his holodeck ship, which he ironically wanted to use on the Pilgrims. And they try and save the day. They're active, like, that's right, they activate like this weird atmosphere sucking satellite kind of ship, which is supposed to take away the atmosphere from their planet, and there's a final countdown. Picard makes it over there. F. Murray Abraham screams like a blue elephant and beams over there where he has an epic fight scene with Picard. it does look pretty cool when they're in the satellite, like flying around Star Wars style. He's trying to activate the satellite to destroy the atmosphere and suck it up, while Picard's trying to sabotage those effects. Okay, I did read that comment. Yeah, okay, so Picard is trying to sabotage the satellite. Mr. Worf gets an action scene where he and the Sona second in command try to take the ship. The Sona goons make it back and overwhelm them. There's this funny moment where Riker almost rams the Enterprise into them, but he fooled them, and they damage their mothership, basically, and knock it out. And it leads to the funniest line in the movie from Mr. Worf. The Sona would like to reach a negotiations. It may have something to do with the fact that we only have 20 seconds of atmosphere left. Or no, 20 seconds of life support. Sorry, apologies for butchering that line, but like everything else in Insurrection, it's pretty forgettable. So, Picard blows up the atmosphere-sucking satellite, killing F. Murray Abraham and saving those not-so-innocent Baku and foiling their evil plan. The Baku at least make peace with the Enterprise crew, and they do invite the Sonya back, realizing the error of their mistakes and forgiving the Sona for being exiled to death, where the Sona are welcomed back with open arms among the Baku, and we learn a lesson about not being Imperial pigs. They all hug, Data learns about playing from an annoying little boy, and a happy ending, I guess. They all beam home, and Picard's crew basically has a lot more self-confidence and moral rights now from all this, and the Baku and Sona live in peace, yada yada. Yeah, it's pretty lame. It is a troubled tribble. I used to have fun watching this movie. There are some highlights I will defend. Geordi regaining his sight to watch the sunset is a really beautiful scene. I do like the funny moment where Worf and Picard trick Data with a song sequence as they're chasing him. And, oh yeah, Deanna Troi gets a nude scene in this, so definitely point there. I love seeing Deanna Troi. Yeah, Deanna Troi gets a nude scene. She's in the bathtub with Riker. They're having a sexy time and basically get back together since they wanted to fill the void of the will they won't they romance they had on the show. So, yeah, there are some good moments here in Insurrection. I'm sorry, Linkara, if you're watching. I don't consider it the worst movie of the saga, but I agree it is still pretty bad. It is a troubled tribble. Some good moments, but overall, a very sloppy story. So now we finally get to the last Next Generation movie, Star Trek Nemesis. Alright, so this might be another controversial opinion from Kat, but Nemesis, I actually thought was pretty alright. I'm putting it on they've adapted. Yeah, we'll stick it there. Star Trek Nemesis, the final movie of Picard's crew, until they would all come back for that terrible Picard series, which sucked until the final season. Star Trek Nemesis. You know how Kirk's team dealt with human and Klingon relations? Well, Picard's team get to deal with human and Romulan relations. The Romulans are finally back in the major villains of a movie for once, where the Romulan Council is completely assassinated by our villain, Praetor Shinzon. That was his name. Praetor Shinzon, played by Tom Hardy in one of his earliest roles. Praetor Shinzon makes a coup for the Romulan power, and he assassinates all the Romulans with his new death ray, which basically disintegrates all life forms if it scans over you. I have no problem with that. Nemesis was pretty fine. Yeah, Nemesis gets a bad rap because, well, it's one of the weaker movies, and for the longest time, it was the last ever Star Trek movie until the reboots came along, and understandably, a lot of people felt disappointed by it because it's basically a big dumb action movie taking place in the Star Trek world, and that's honestly kind of why I like it. It is a dumb fun action movie with a lot of love for Star Trek. Patrick Stewart is at his A game in this movie, and Brent Spiner finally fulfills his Data arc in what was supposed to be his last performance as Data, but we'll get to that. So, Praetor Shinzon, played by Tom Hardy, basically assassinates the Romulan Council and takes over, and wants to open negotiations with the Federation, asking if Picard's team will come visit him. And yeah, we find out there is a little more to this seemingly too good to be true kind of deal. Picard and crew are finally fulfilled in life. They're on their final days aboard the Enterprise E. Riker and Troy finally get married, and yeah, it was great seeing Deanna and Will finally tying the knot, having their marriage, getting together. The Enterprise crew are funny and badass in this movie. Basically, we find out that they're being watched by Praetor Shinzon, who's luring them and manipulating events. They go on a mission where they find a prototype data called B4. A lot of people really did not like B4 because, well, he's played for comedy, but honestly, I kind of liked him. I thought B4 was pretty adorable. They find B4, and they put him together, realizing that he's a lost prototype of Data, but there's more to him than meets the eye. Basically, they make contact with Shinzon, and we get our big reveal that Shinzon is Picard! A clone of Picard that was raised on Romulus for one of their crazy plans, which never came to fruition. Yeah, Shinzon is a younger evil Picard who took over as the president of the Romulans, and he wants to make contact with Picard because he finally found him after all these time, the man he was cloned from, the man he was supposed to replace, and it's basically Picard fighting an evil version of himself. And honestly, I actually found that idea fun. I know it's kind of cliche and overdone, but the villain is basically a dark reflection of our hero. Everything that our hero could have been if he was raised evil. Praetor Shinzon and his second-in-command, Ron Perlman, is like the viceroy. He's from Remus, the dark side of Romulus, where the Remans live. The Remans are these hideous goblin-looking aliens, and apparently they took Shinzon in when the Romulans rejected him when they no longer needed him for their clone plot. They dumped him in the mines where Ron Perlman took pity on him and raised him as a son, and basically their plight convinced Tom Hardy's Shinzon to take over, realizing that the Romulans were bad leaders and to seize power himself. Sort of how, like, Picard took risks by becoming a Starfleet captain. Shinzon basically killed the old council. He had conspirators help him, so that explained how he was able to kill them all. And we find out he wants Picard, but only so he can kill him. Basically, Shinzon is kind of a mixed bag as a villain. They don't go too well into him as a person because it's mostly his obsession with Picard. He wants to be like Picard, and we find out Shinzon's actually dying because his clone tissue is degenerating. He needs Picard to basically save himself, and to their credit, Tom Hardy gets like this really cool alien makeup. It looks like he's melting. His skin is like all veiny and gross. He's turning blue. Really gnarly looking makeup, I will say. The Remans actually look pretty cool in this. There is another controversial scene where Ron Perlman, the Viceroy, tries to rape Deanna Troi. Like, Deanna's having her honeymoon with Riker, and apparently the Viceroy and Shinzon enter her mind and try to rape her, basically. They, like, project images of themselves over Riker as he's banging her, and it scars Deanna for life, and sort of gave, like, Deanna kind of an arch enemy through Ron Perlman's Viceroy, and yeah, I can understand people not liking the scene. Me, I was okay with it because, one, they're the bad guys, and two, it leads to a very satisfying fight in the climax where Deanna gets back at her would-be rapist by basically mind-raping him and tapping into his mind to find them while their Romulan bird of prey is cloaked. And they finally take the bastards down, which is pretty cool. Yeah, spoiler alert, Dark Picard is actually the true villain. He tried to negotiate with Picard, but when that went nowhere, he basically jumped on the evil side and tries to abduct Picard. Really epic rescue scene of Data pretending to be B4 to infiltrate the ship, and I love the Scorpion shuttle. That thing was awesome. The Scorpion shuttles, basically that's the first time we actually see fighter jets in Star Trek. I don't know why, but Star Trek did not have like a lot of squad fighters like X-Wings on Star Wars. The Scorpion was definitely a really cool addition. I hope we see it again. The Scorpion fighter basically gets hijacked by Picard and Data, and they have this epic prison break out of his mothership. It's really awesome. Very epic action scenes in this, I will say. There's an action sequence like every 20 minutes, and they all look cool. From the Road Warrior chase scene to the Scorpion shuttle escape scene to the space fights against the cloaked Romulan bird of prey. Really epic. So we find out Shinzon actually needed Picard to harvest his organs to keep himself alive longer, and basically Picard sort of undergoes like this identity crisis again. Like he's like torn between killing Shinzon and actually like letting him live, trying to redeem him. He tries to negotiate with Shinzon because they're both the same. He's trying to appeal to his good side, and Shinzon is having none of that. He's completely accepted his dark side, and he's makes it very clear he's envious of Picard. He's jealous of how great Picard is, how great his life was, and he wants to eliminate the original to basically become the better man. The Romulan bird of prey is a really creepy starship too. It's like this big Star Destroyer megaship, but it can turn invisible, and it has an advanced version of Shinzon's death ray, the same ray he used to assassinate the Council, rebuilt into a starship capable of eliminating entire planets, and he wants to use this to kill Picard's Enterprise E. Big epic space fight. We get the coolest scene of the Enterprise plowing into the bird of prey. Like, both ships collide. A lot of monumental damage, breaches in the hull, zero gravity, all that cool stuff. Shinzon has a fight with Kirk and Picard. Sorry, I keep saying Kirk because Kirk has the most movies. Shinzon has a pretty epic fight with Picard. Picard decides he's gotta be a man and fight Shinzon himself, where he beams aboard the control room and he basically kills a whole bunch of Remans. The Remans are invading the Enterprise to try and retrieve Picard themselves. Ron Perlman has an epic fight scene with Riker, where Riker avenges his wife's honor by killing Ron Perlman, sending him falling down the Death Star pit. And yeah, he dies, and Picard finally fights Shinzon one-on-one. He eventually bests him by impaling him on this weird spike pole that I guess was decorating their ship. Yeah, Shinzon dies, he gets impaled, and Shinzon says that he'll go out taking down Picard with him, kind of Khan style. However, Data arrives, and we get to either the best moment or worst moment of this movie. Data saves Picard by beaming him back and sacrifices himself by blowing up the super weapon, taking down the super ship and himself with it. And yeah, this led to one of the controversial moments of the movie. Data gets killed off. His death is the only major casualty of the Team Picard. And yeah, it is pretty sad, honestly, because I did think Data's arc did come full circle. He finally realizes what it's like to be alive and cares for his friends. He does a needless sacrifice, even though Picard gave him a direct order not to save him. Data chooses to sacrifice himself because he's just a mere machine, and the lives of his friends deserve more. He saves Picard, sends him back, and blows up. And it ends with a bittersweet ending where humans and Romulans are starting to have good relations. They took down Shinzon, and one of the Shinzon's like girlfriends basically warms up to Picard and realizes that he's actually alright, wants to make peace with the humans. Humans and Romulans are far from peace, but are on much better terms, and sadly did come at the cost of Data. And It ends on a seemingly sad note where Picard talks to B4, who's still alive. They decide to reactivate B4 and let him carry on Data's legacy, but just when you think all hope is lost, B4 expresses a memory Data had. He sings the song Data sung at Riker and Troy's wedding, and it gives you this kind of hope that Data's spirit lives on. That Data is now in B4, but it's kept ambiguous for, that sliver of hope kind of ending. And Picard finally retires until they'll bring him back for a terrible streaming show. So yeah, Star Trek Nemesis, honestly alright. I thought it was pretty decent. I really liked the action. I thought the story was fun. It had good ideas. It is not an S-tier masterpiece, I can agree on that, but I actually don't understand all the hate it gets. It's just a fun action movie set in the Star Trek world. Yeah, I know it's not philosophical, but after seeing the slow motion picture, I thought it was a breath of fresh air in comparison. Star Trek Nemesis, Tom Hardy was underrated in this. Jean-Luc Picard is at his best A-game in this. Brent Spiner's Data gets a very sad moment and a fulfilling character arc, and some of the best special effects in the series, best action in the series, best suspense in the series. Nemesis is a really fun action movie. It is definitely not a masterpiece, but I would actually recommend it. It's fun. Which Nemesis is better, Star Trek Nemesis or Resident Evil Nemesis? Well, if we're talking movies, Star Trek Nemesis. If we're talking about video game versus the movie, definitely the video game. Yeah, they did more with their Nemesis. Nemesis was just called for Star Trek because it's basically Picard fighting his ultimate threat. His Nemesis is himself, which could have worked, but a bit sloppy. I will still put it on they've adapted. Yeah, Nemesis is fine. So I'm going to go on another bathroom break, but now we enter the Kelvin timeline, the reboot movies. BRB. Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero. And we're back with the reboot Trek movies. And now the reboot-ish trilogy. This is going to be interesting. Okay, so yeah, let's get this out of the way. The reboot has a very split fan base. There are fans of this trilogy, and there are haters of this trilogy. I understand where some of the hate comes from. However, I actually thought this trilogy was alright, but we'll talk about more each individual film's pros and cons soon enough. Right now, let's talk about the first reboot movie, Star Trek, J.J. Abrams' reboot. And I actually love this movie. I know, controversial, but I'm putting it on S tier. Yeah, we'll put it under Search for Spock. Yeah, I actually love the first Star Trek movie, the reboot with Chris Pine's Captain Kirk and Zachary Quinto's Mr. Spock, and the villain Nero, who I thought was alright, not a high-tier villain, but definitely an effective one. So, if you don't know, it's basically smashing the reset button, sort of. It's a new timeline. Yeah, I know if Emily was here, she'll go nuts at how many times we'll say timeline. It's an alternate reality. Basically, it's supposed to be Kirk and Spock's origin of how they became the people we know on the Enterprise, the heroes we know and love. However, it's also kind of an alternate continuity, which I felt was pretty pointless. It's like, would anyone really care? But yeah, apparently it is a sort of reboot slash reset button on Star Trek. We follow Kirk and Spock becoming the men we know and love. Chris Pine's Captain Kirk, Zachary Quino as Mr. Spock are the main heroes of this movie, and I actually think they do a really good job in the first one. It's basically Kirk and Spock's origin. We see how they become the captain of the Enterprise, the heroes we know and love, and how they meet all the iconic cast. We meet Zoe Saldana's Uhura. We meet weirdly Simon Pegg as Scotty, which is pretty funny. We meet the late Anton Yelchin as Mr. Chekhov, and Harold from Harold and Kumar as Sulu, and etc. The first one took me a bit to grow with the new cast. Overall, it was pretty solid to me. Don't forget Chekhov, played by the late Anton Yelchin. Yeah, rest in peace, Anton Yelchin. We lost him too soon. Anton Yelchin played Mr. Chekhov, and he was honestly pretty funny. He was a humorous comic relief character. So, the movie opens up with the death of Kirk's parents. We meet Tiberius. No, not Tiberius. We meet Chris Hemsworth as Kirk's dad and his mom, who's giving birth to our main character. They're attacked by our movie's villain, Nero. Nero was a former miner for Romulus. However, he lost his home planet because a supernova destroyed the entire planet Romulus and kind of wiped out their species. The Romulus was destroyed, which controversial decision, but I was okay with it because I didn't think they'd be returning to it in future Star Trek shows. Let's just put it that way. Romulus was destroyed. Like I will say, this intro that was very emotional, very strong. Yeah, pretty strong. Kirk's dad, we actually get to see Kirk's dad as the hero the original series always claimed he was. Chris Hemsworth plays Kirk's dad, and he sacrifices himself by crashing the Kelvin into the super starship, the Narada, I believe it was called. It's basically this giant, scaled up Death Star with, claws on it. Basically, he suicide kamikazes the evil Romulan spaceship to buy them time to escape. Kirk is born. Nero wants to change the outcome of his timeline. He lost his home planet, including his beloved wife, and wants revenge on Ambassador Spock. Basically, we'll find out more on this later, but he blames Spock for losing his planet, and he wants to alter time by going back to kill Kirk and Spock. However, before that happens, he disappears for a while, and we follow Kirk and Spock living their life. Joining Starfleet, Spock is facing discrimination because we finally see how Vulcan treats him for being half human and half Vulcan. They treat him like he's an outsider. Spock has trouble fitting in, and he's kind of struggles with his identity thanks to his heritage. His dad is, kind of despised because they believe he's a traitor for loving a human woman. Nero and Romulus, Roman connections there. Yeah, you forgot Remus, or the Remans. Yeah, okay. So yeah, basically, we follow their origin. Kirk is a loose cannon who doesn't play by the rules. He's a troublemaking jerk, a total rebel, until he slowly wises up. He meets Captain Pike, played by the greatest Batman, Bruce Greenwood. Bruce Greenwood plays Captain Pike, a character who did appear on Star Trek. However, he was like the original captain of the Enterprise show until apparently people didn't like Jeffrey Hunter's performance as him, and they replaced him with William Shatner's Kirk. Captain Pike is in this, and he's Kirk's mentor, and a cute wink to Star Trek fans. He wants to bring Kirk into Starfleet and help Kirk shape up to be a great man like his dad was, and Kirk reluctantly decides actually he would be interested in that and joins up. Spock decides that Vulcan is not going to accept him, and he basically tells the Vulcan Academy to suck it for discriminating him as a human, and joins Starfleet. He and Kirk become total rivals. It's gonna be one of those plots where Kirk and Spock don't like each other, even though we know them all as best friends. I still wonder, what would have happened if Remus killed Romulus? I guess we'll never know. The world may never know. Yeah, basically, the first act of the movie is introducing new fans and old fans, this generation's the original series cast and characters. We meet Captain Pike, we meet Uhura, played by the sexy Zoe Saldana. Yeah, this movie actually got me to discover Zoe. And yeah, she gets one of her famous nude scenes in this movie, so definitely recommend it for that. Yeah, we meet the sexy Uhura, we meet Mr. Sulu, Mr. Chekhov, and halfway in the film we meet Simon Pegg as Scotty, which I agree was kind of a weird choice, seeing Shaun of the Dead is playing Scotty in this timeline. Not sure how a lot of people felt about that, but because Scotty has always been kind of a funny character, I guess it makes sense to hire Simon Pegg. And, oh yeah, Karl Urban as Dr. McCoy, who I think is the best one who nails his role. Karl Urban really feels like DeForest Kelley in this. My mom really likes Dr. McCoy, and she was absolutely impressed by Karl Urban, because McCoy's her favorite character. Yeah, Karl Urban's pretty funny. Basically, they go on their first mission together, but we find out, haha, it's actually Nero. Hi, Christopher, I'm Nero. Nero is destroying the planet Vulcan because his mining vessel, because it has elite high tech from the future, is capable of doing things that normal Star Trek technology can't do yet. He has this mining drill which can drill a hole straight into the center of a planet, and he stole this powerful MacGuffin called red matter. Red matter, if it's shot into space, can create a black hole capable of destroying anything, and he uses this to basically destroy planets, starting with planet Vulcan because he wants to get back at Spock, because the Romulans have always hated Vulcan. Yep, Zoe Saldana's been in quite a bit of space-like franchises. The other, of course, being Guardians of the Galaxy. Oh, don't forget Avatar. She's the cat girl Princess Neytiri. Yeah, and apparently she's gonna be in more Avatar sequels. Yeah, she was in that. She was in Guardians of the Galaxy. There's another thing I can't remember, but I'm sure, she's pretty much the hot chick in every space show ever. Basically, this black hole destroys planet Vulcan, and Spock completely fails as a captain. Captain Pike gets captured, and Kirk and Sulu take out the nuclear drill, slowing the Romulans down a bit, but they fail to save the planet Vulcan, and Spock undergoes his emotional crisis because his entire home planet was destroyed, and Vulcans are now an endangered species. Planet Vulcan's destroyed, Nero seemingly won, and he keeps Captain Pike alive because he needs Captain Pike to give him access codes so he can infiltrate Earth's solar system without facing problem. Nero gets away, Kirk and Spock have a final fight. Kirk wants to save Captain Pike and calls Spock out for being a bad captain. Spock has him removed from the ship and shot off into space, where they send him to an Arctic planet. I presume that they were going to send him to Scotty to watch over. Otherwise, it would have been weird stranding him on that death planet. Really cool special effects, too. Kirk is, chased by these creepy-ass Lovecraftian monsters. And he's on an ice planet, he's running away, and he gets saved by, dun dun dun, future Spock, played by the late, great Leonard Nimoy. Yes, Leonard Nimoy playing an older future Spock, his same character he played on the 60s TV show again, is in this. Old Spock is kind of Kirk's Obi-Wan mentor. He saves Kirk and realizes it's my best friend as a kid. And holy cow, this moment was so awesome. I remember everyone in the theaters applauding and loving it, and it was so cool seeing Leonard Nimoy back as a future Elder Spock. This is Ambassador Spock from the future, one of the great leaders of Vulcan. Spock actually time traveled here. Spock was originally trying to save the planet Romulus from the supernova, but tragically he didn't make it on time. They lost the planet, but he fought against Nero. Nero blamed Spock for the loss of their planet and thought Vulcans were conspiring against them. They fought, but the red matter he unleashed, a black hole, caused a time portal, which sucked Ambassador Spock and Nero and his megaship into the Kelvin timeline. A short but very welcomed appearance. Yes, I agree. My friend Filmaru keeps trying to claim that Han Solo and Chewie returning in The Force Awakens was the best, but for me, seeing Leonard Nimoy back as Spock was one of the coolest things ever to me. It's like, oh, it's that guy from the original show. He's like doing a passing on the torch kind of character arc. So old Spock basically helps Kirk and shows him everything through his mind meld. He was trying to save Romulus but failed. During a scuffle, they got sucked into the black hole from the red matter he unleashed into space, and Ambassador Spock and Nero ended up in different points in time. Ambassador Spock ended up at a later period after Nero. Nero ambushed him, but decided to punish Spock for failing him by exiling him on this Arctic planet too, which was conveniently nearby Vulcan, so he can learn his pain and watch his own planet die. Yeah, Nero destroyed planet Vulcan as revenge against Mr. Spock and left Spock, the original Spock, for dead on this ice planet too. And Spock helps Kirk make it back to the Enterprise because conveniently Scotty is on this planet, played by Shaun of the Dead, and the Oompa Loompa from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is one of his buddies. Basically, they find Scotty at like this Arctic base because apparently Scotty lost Porthos, Archer's dog, and he was here as punishment. Yeah, I can't believe Porthos went missing. Oh, Porthos was the best character on Enterprise. But yeah, Scotty apparently lost the dog while beaming him in a science experiment, and Archer didn't like that because we see how Archer snaps when he loses his dog. But yeah, Scotty teams up with them, and future Spock shows Scotty his missing equations for like very extended long-range teleporting, where Scotty and Kirk go aboard the Enterprise through his long-range beaming formula, and Spock basically can't because yada yada yada, you'll break the time barrier and launch space and whatever. Basically, old Spock can't come, and he basically gives Kirk his motivational speech telling him that we're actually best friends in the future and I am emotionally compromised, but you showed me great things. And I really like this farewell scene. I love this line, and I know fans don't like this movie, but this scene made me really love the film. Is that going back in time to changing events in your favor? That's cheating. And Spock says, I think I learned a thing or two from an old friend. And, oh, great scene. It reminds me of Kirk and Spock's great friendship. Yeah, I'll give J.J. Abrams that. That was awesome. So yeah, Kirk and Scotty beam aboard the Enterprise. There's this wacky chase scene where Scotty's in, like, the toilet water, and very odd. But yeah, they eventually make it to Spock, and Kirk gets Spock to crack under pressure. He has him have an emotional outburst. I know people hate this scene too, because Spock's expressing emotion and acting like a child, but keep in mind, he is still a newbie cadet at this point. He hasn't led a starship, and he just lost his planet, and his mom also died. Winona Ryder is Spock's mom, and she died horribly. And basically, Spock realizes he's emotionally compromised, and he relinquishes power, and of course, Kirk was like first officer for Captain Pike, meaning Kirk is finally captain, where he takes charge, and they challenge Nero to save the day. There's this very heartfelt scene where Spock finally talks to his dad, and his dad reveals that actually Vulcans can express emotions. He married a human mother because he loved her, meaning that Vulcans do have feelings and do have a soul deep down underneath their cold logic front, and Spock realizes that he was normal or something all along and gets his emotional closure. So Spock and Kirk beam aboard Nero's ship, a lot of kick-ass action scenes, a lot of fun spaceship scenes, really epic music. Star Trek, say what you will about the reboots, but the musical score is epic. I really love the chorus theme of the original Star Trek theme. It is so kick-ass. They fight Nero. Eric Bana honestly does a pretty decent job as an evil psychotic villain. He tragically isn't one of the greats, but the guy, he worked well. He did what he did. He plays like this evil mirror version of both Spock and Kirk because he wanted great things for his future, and he's basically going back in the past to ruin that. And he has an epic fight with Captain Kirk. The spaceship, the Narada, looks pretty trippy, really creepy. There's apparently a lot of, like, Death Star pits you can fall into. And, oh yeah, Kirk kills, like, Will Wheaton on there. Pretty funny. So eventually, they foil his scheme, and Spock uses Ambassador Spock's future ship, which has the red matter in it, to suicide bomb the Narada. They lure him away from Earth into the outer reaches of space, where Nero, obsessed with revenge, completely falls for their trap, and the Enterprise shows up in a badass saving the day moment where it takes out their ship. The red matter goes off, completely forming like a black hole that will consume the Narada. Kirk and Spock make it back on board the ship, and Spock decides not to save them. Nero says, I would rather suffer the death of Romulus 1,000 times over. I would rather die of agony than accept help from you. And Kirk fulfills his wish. They shoot him dead. The black hole destroys their ship. The Enterprise bombs him to make sure nothing of him is left in their timeline. They barely escape the black hole reach, but thanks to Scotty, they manage to escape and they save the galaxy. So, Kirk is finally promoted to captain and given the rank command of the Enterprise. Spock and Kirk at last begin the starts of their beautiful friendship, and there's a really heartfelt scene of Leonard Nimoy passing the torch on to Zachary Quinto, basically telling Spock, put aside logic, do what feels right, and it's another scene I really like. I can't help it. I love Leonard Nimoy. So seeing older Spock all over this movie was definitely the greatest moments. It's what elevates it to the live long and prosper. Leonard Nimoy tells Spock to just be himself, basically, and start giving his new friends a chance, where we get the opening theme of the original series, but with better graphics, where Kirk's on his launch and Leonard Nimoy delivers the famous "Space, the Final Frontier" speech, and yeah, they launch off to presumably reenact the original series. But yeah, pretty kick-ass. I love this movie. I actually really like it. The ship is really fun. There's really awesome CGI, really awesome space battles. I do think they do the Enterprise crew justice. I know it does have some flaws and some question marks, like Nero's exact plan. Like, why is he trying to destroy the Earth when he should be saving Romulus and warning them of future events for the Empire? But I guess he's just crazy. I like it. I like Star Trek, the reboot. I will put it on Live Long and Prosper. It is a fun movie. It definitely doesn't outclass these greats, but I would actually watch it again, and I would say it is a great time. It is definitely the best of the Abrahams reboot movies, we'll put it that way. So yeah, congrats. The first one is a Live Long and Prosper. Oh boy, now we get to the other two. Next is Star Trek Into Darkness. Sorry, need some water. Alright, Star Trek Into Darkness. The one with the return of Khan! Yes, Benedict Cumberbatch is in it as Khan. Star Trek Into Darkness is a remake in disguise. It is a sort of remake of The Wrath of Khan, but we're not supposed to know Benedict Cumberbatch is actually Khan. Except it was kind of spoiled and both kind of obvious, and Benedict Cumberbatch basically acts like Ricardo Montalban. Oh boy, so Into Darkness, I'm gonna put on Basic Drone. Yeah, I know, it should be a lot lower, some people might say, but Into Darkness had its moments. Basically, Kirk and Spock are finally doing what they do, being badass heroes of the Enterprise. However, a new villain is on the rise. It's John Harrison, aka it's actually Khan using a false name. Khan is causing a lot of terrorism, attacking Starfleet bases, attacking a lot of secret projects, a lot of HQs, killing off very important Starfleet admirals and diplomats. So Kirk and Spock are basically summoned in to stop him. During one of the meetings between the Starfleet High Council, John Harrison shows up in a Scorpion shuttle and shoots all the admirals because, like idiots, they don't have security. He bombards their tower. Captain Pike sadly dies in this. That's one of the reasons my mom didn't like this movie. Captain Pike dies, and Spock, like, feels his pain. Spock undergoes kind of this existential kind of crisis, questioning why people are afraid of death. Why people, like, don't want to die. Why people want to live. Why people do foolish things for the sake of their friends' lives. Into Darkness is the weakest of the reboot trilogy for me. It has some good things, but unfortunately some questionable things in it too. Oh yeah, like a Tribble revived Kirk. My brother Wolf wanted to rub that one in. Yeah, a Tribble revives Kirk. Basically, there are kind of some plot holes and plot conveniences in this movie. Number one, we find out Khan was actually freed by RoboCop. Yeah, Peter Weller plays like this insane, corrupt admiral kind of guy. RoboCop apparently unfroze Khan because he needed his help to prepare an ultimate super weapon to fight the Klingons, which makes no sense because, like, Khan is from the past and you're from an advanced future. It's like getting Hitler revived in the present to ask him to build the new high-tech drones and iPhones. It's like, he wouldn't know any of that crap. Basically, Khan was brought from the Botany Bay ship, he and his superhumans, by RoboCop. RoboCop is using Khan to help him basically manipulate political events so he can unleash his new super weapon, the Dark Enterprise. Yeah, I know it has a name, but I mean, it's a super dark, black, negative enterprise, and yeah, I do think it is pretty lazy. Like, the Dark Enterprise is kind of the size of the Super Star Destroyer. It's this massive ship which towers over other megaships, basically. The Dark Enterprise is going to be used because RoboCop wants to stir up a political conflict, so they'll declare war on the Klingons. He basically blames the Klingons for all the bad stuff happening in the galaxy and yada yada. He's just a racist psychopath. Basically, he forces Khan into helping him. He has Khan's pods of all his superhuman crew. We don't actually get to see the crew from The Wrath of Khan come back. They're all still frozen in cryostasis except for Benedict Cumberbatch's Khan. Basically, he's kind of forcing Khan to be like his patsy, doing all his dirty work. Khan kills a lot of important people, stir up some terrorism, and they're framing the Klingons for starting this, so he can legally declare war upon the Klingon solar system, basically. He wants to use the Dark Enterprise to go there and destroy Kronos and all the Klingon Empire, and basically it's all a big fat lie. He's just an insane racist psychopath, and Khan is actually the real villain. Khan's been like playing him along and bowing down before RoboCop just to get his crew back alive. They try to make Khan a dark mirror of Kirk because he'll do anything for the crew he cares about, just like Kirk, and lets his emotions kind of run him. However, Khan is the most dangerous man they ever faced. It's like, it kind of relies on a lot of the characters making really stupid choices. Some smart choices, like Kirk obviously doesn't trust him. Kirk is very emotional because his mentor Captain Pike died, and his best friend Spock has not cherished their friendship like he was hoping. They have like a big epic space fight. I will say, I do love when they face the Dark Enterprise and they do the space jump. They launch across like the battlefield to get to it. Scotty apparently managed to find his way upon the Dark Enterprise. He got fired by Kirk because he didn't approve of the new missiles, which he should have no say in because he's an engineer and not their weapons expert, but whatever. Scotty got fired, but he listens to Kirk when he asks for help, and he finds the Dark Enterprise and manages to infiltrate it. Yeah, somehow this advanced super weapon did not detect Scotty landing a shuttle on there. say RoboCop is a robot cop and those don't exist in reality, so RoboCop is going to reality prison. Yeah, he should. Peter Weller is definitely over the top in this, and honestly, I don't think it's kind of the fun over the top like Christopher Lloyd Klingon. It's definitely a more, he's trying to be super scary and threatening, but he just comes across like a screaming idiot in half his scenes. It's sad because Peter Weller is a good actor. I mean, look at RoboCop, but here he's kind of like the fake out villain. He's not threatening, and surprise, Khan betrays him and pops his skull. Pretty graphic death, I'll give them that. Yeah, Khan pops his skull and takes over the Dark Enterprise. How he manages to man a mega star destroyer without any crew doing anything is beyond me, but yeah, apparently he kills RoboCop when they seize control of the Dark Enterprise, and Kirk and Scotty and Dr. Marcus, Dr. Marcus is in this movie because she was in the Wrath of Khan, so of course she has to be in it. And I would say Alice Eve is pretty hot. Really like the underwear scene. I'm not complaining about that, where we see Alice Eve undressing to put on her Enviro suit, and we get a nice shot of how hot Alice Eve looks. Not gonna lie, she is pretty sexy. I can definitely see why Kirk loved Carol Marcus so much. Yeah, basically, Carol Marcus is only on here because, one, she's RoboCop's daughter, who he hesitates on killing so the Enterprise can live a bit longer, and two, she basically helps save the day. She's also a brilliant medical doctor. She manages to save Khan's crew. She does an operation on the missiles they got, and the missiles actually have Khan's superhumans still in their cryopods. I guess they were there so RoboCop could have them killed if the Enterprise shoots them, but kind of bizarre. Khan steals control of the Dark Enterprise, and Spock returns the missiles carrying his crew in them, but haha, the missiles don't actually have his crew. They saved them all. They're actually real missiles, and they blow up the Dark Enterprise from the inside because, like a complete dumbass, Khan didn't bother to check up on them. And the Dark Enterprise falls right out of the sky, and they, I think, crash on Earth. It's like, was the battle really that close? Yeah, they crash both the USS Enterprise and the Dark Enterprise on Earth, and I guess Earth was that close by this super mega death battle in space, but yeah. Apparently, the Dark Enterprise crashes, but Khan still survived. The Enterprise barely survives its crash because, get this, they need to fix the reactor core, but someone has to go in there in unsafe environment to save it. And they surprise you by switching the roles. Instead, Spock is the captain, and Captain Kirk goes into the reactor to pull the sacrifice and save the reactor at the cost of his own life, which saves the Enterprise from a death crash, basically. And yes, they reenact the famous scene from Wrath of Khan where they're both against the reactor glass. This time, Kirk is dying of radiation poisoning, slowly losing his life and telling Spock that he did it to save his friend. And Spock finally understands why life is precious and the value of saving people's friends, because Kirk's death completely breaks him. It has him all emotional, and it finally makes Spock realize that he truly did take their friendship for granted. And you are and always shall be my friend. And it's almost a good scene up until Spock is the one that screams, Khan! Yeah, great timing on that. You had to have that at the end there. So Spock decides to hunt down Khan on foot. Why he doesn't contact a bunch of soldiers to ambush him, I'll never know. Yeah, the Vulcan salute in the comments, see that. So he chases Khan on foot. They have a fight on top of like spaceships and hovercrafts, and Spock beats the crap out of Khan and almost kills him. And we get to one of the worst parts of the movie. They find out that Khan's blood, combined with a tribble, can actually revive a dead person. And yes, McCoy and Marcus use this to save Kirk, but they need more of Khan's blood, where Uhura goes down and talks Spock out of killing Khan because, of course, Spock needs an emotional talking to, whereas Spock beats up Khan and doesn't kill him because they need Khan's blood. So Khan's captured, they revive Kirk with a tribble in the blood cell, and Kirk is back to his jolly old self as if he never died, rendering that whole emotional scene kind of pointless. Like, geez, give credit to the search for Spock. At least they waited one movie to bring him back. Here, no, Kirk's alive at the end. So, Khan's put on ice, alive, and probably going to be used for another sequel, which we've never gotten, so don't worry, we probably won't see him again. Khan's stored away on ice, the Enterprise crew are reunited, Kirk and Spock are finally tight, they're best friends, Spock learns the lesson of valuing friendship and life, and the Enterprise crew are heroes for stopping that evil Khan and psychotic RoboCop. And they go on their 5-year mission again, which I thought they did at the end of the first one, but apparently not. They're going on the 5-year mission like in the original series, and teasing more adventures to come. Yeah, Into Darkness, it's okay. I don't hate it as much as everyone else does, but I will put it on basic drone because there are some good moments, there are some fun scenes. Once again, the action and the music are top tier, they are awesome. The storytelling and the betrayal of Khan are kind of a question mark. So many plot points of this movie are very illogical. Yeah, I think the Critical Drinker actually did a very thorough explanation on what didn't work in Into Darkness. There's some very big plot holes and a lot of contrivances which did kind of ruin it. Like, say what you will about the first one, but at least the story felt like it was thought out. Into Darkness is kind of jumbled. So, Benedict Cumberbatch is not a bad actor, but I don't know, I felt very kind of mid on his Khan. He does a great job as the villain, but Khan is one of those high-tier villains, so you kind of expect the best, and while he was a good choice, he didn't deliver a very memorable performance. I mean, let's be real, nobody was gonna outclass Ricardo Montalban, even if many generations did pass. Into Darkness, I do feel is a fun movie, but a very flawed movie too. There's some stuff that doesn't make sense. There's a lot of genuinely good humor, I will say. I do like this version of the original series crew. And I do think Spock and Kirk undergo really good character arcs. The scene where Kirk is dying almost made me cry, but that's because it reminded me of the good Spock death in the original Wrath of Khan. There's very fun action, very good CGI, very good music, and it was definitely alright, but it is not a high-tier Star Trek movie. I will put it on basic drone because it's not the worst thing ever. Like, let's just stop acting like Into Darkness was the bottom of the barrel next to Generations and the slow motion picture. It is much more watchable than those. It is flawed, but fine. Which leads us to the final movie, the last good final movie. Yeah, Section 31, bad. It is on It's Dead, Jim. Don't bother. We're going to talk about the last movie, but I'm going to go on my final restroom break. So let's get hyped or scared for this one. Tell me how you feel about Beyond. Alright, I'm back, and we're finally gonna wrap this up with Star Trek Beyond. Currently the last theatrical Star Trek movie. Yeah, Section 31 sucked. Don't watch it. Yeah, Star Trek Beyond. This is the last one in the Kelvin timeline, at least so far. Chris Pine has mentioned there might be a fourth movie, but that seems to be a question mark kind of now. Isn't it annoying when movie remakes and sequels rely on nostalgia? Yeah, definitely. Into Darkness was guilty of that. At least the first one didn't have it upstage its main plot. Oh, of course, the reboot movies are nowhere near as bad as 1, 5, 9, and 31. Definitely would still watch Into Darkness more than those. Yeah, Into Darkness is definitely a fun movie, but it's a bad Star Trek movie. That's the problem. It's a good movie on its own. Well, alright, an okay movie on its own, but not a top-tier Star Trek film. That's why it gets so much hate. It is a lot more watchable than these crappy ones. But Star Trek Beyond. Only 2 of us in the chat. Oh, 3, and now I see a third one now. Alright, so we droned on long enough. Let's do Beyond. The last theatrical Star Trek movie and the last one with Chris Pine. Star Trek Beyond, I will put on They've Adapted. Yeah, I'll put it above Nemesis. Yeah, okay, Star Trek Beyond, They've Adapted. It is a huge step up from Into Darkness, that is for sure. It's another dumb, fun Star Trek movie. It's not perfect, but I will say this one had a lot more thought, fun, and effort put into it than Into Darkness did. Till next time. Yeah, okay. Alright, I guess see you later, just some random guy. Okay, yeah, Star Trek Beyond, I honestly do like. I don't think it's that bad. It does have some flaws, but a huge step up from Into Darkness. Like, let's not deny, this one is much better than Into Darkness, because it had fun, and it was a lot more creative. This one, Captain Kirk is once again questioning his life, deciding if he made a good decision having a career over family. We see Sulu is gay in this version, and he has like a husband and a daughter. If you don't remember, the daughter was on Generations for like a 2-second cameo. Beyond is like Nemesis for me. It's honestly fine, and definitely not as bad as people say. Yeah, I fully agree. This is kind of in a similar vein of Nemesis. It's a fine Star Trek movie. It had fun with the franchise, but it didn't push the boundaries or become a masterpiece like all these top ones. Basically, Captain Kirk is sent on a mission to go into the great unknown to fight the evil Idris Elba, who's this psychotic alien mutant kind of freak who we find out was actually something else that we didn't see. And yeah, Idris Elba is a galactic conqueror, destroying starships and basically taking the parts to build up into his weird, his weird locust swarm kind of ships. He has like these battleships that are like wasps that can fly and swarm a ship to death. And Kirk loses the Enterprise. Once again, we see the destruction of the Enterprise. And yeah, I can understand a lot of people feeling tired of it. This is like the first time for the Kelvin timeline, which is why I was okay with it, but yeah, it's been done better on Star Trek 3, Star Trek Generations did this too, and even Nemesis kind of did this. But yeah, basically, Captain Kirk and crew lose the Enterprise, and it's another movie basically trying to show you how awesome the characters are. The characters can actually carry their own in this movie. They're stranded on Idris Elba's like weird wasteland junk planet, and the crew is trying to survive, find each other, reunite. Idris Elba is rounding up any survivors his men have captured. Uhura and Sulu are among those captured. Scotty gets a lot more to do in this, possibly because Simon Pegg got updated to a producer's credit, but yeah. Scotty gets a lot more to do in this. We see Spock and McCoy, who don't like each other, become an odd couple survival team. And Kirk is realizing that his emotions are blinding him again. He's with Mr. Chekhov. Tragically, in Chekhov's last ever movie, Anton Yelchin died after this movie was finally released. It is dedicated to his name. But yeah, they're all stranded, and they all have to find each other, and it's a pretty fun callback to the OG series. Sorry, I just grabbed my charger. My phone was dying. Yeah, it's kind of a cute callback to the original series. It's them back on ground level missions. It's more about the character writing, getting into fun action, funny scenes. Oh, Emilia Clarke is in this as a sexy alien warrior princess. Yeah, of course, everyone loves Emilia Clarke. I know Jon Snow must love her a lot. Yeah, Emilia Clarke is a sexy alien girl in this, and she's pretty funny, not gonna lie. She's shipped more with Scotty than Kirk, though, which is pretty weird. But yeah, they form like this odd ragtag makeshift team to save the day and stop Idris Elba. There's a lot of fun action in this movie. The motorcycle scene where Kirk is riding around, taking out troops, he saves Emilia Clarke, kicks butt. Really fun. The mosquito swarm ships are also pretty cool. They're pretty scary with how effective they are. Eventually, you find out in a twist that Idris Elba is actually a human. He's from the Mako Squad from Star Trek Enterprise. He crash landed on here, and in what's supposed to be a kind of dark reflection of Captain Kirk, he blames Starfleet for wasting his life, for taking everything from him. Idris Elba, definitely much better than Benedict Cumberbatch's Khan, that's for sure. Idris Elba plays like this psychotic, washed up, pissed off former military commando. He crash landed here with the Makos, and they got mutated into weird alien monsters somehow. And basically, Captain Kirk's ship was attacked because they have a device he needs to build a doomsday weapon which will destroy entire planets. And basically, Kirk tries to stop him. He successfully fixes his ships and finally takes them off, planning to invade like a Deep Space Nine type of station. Captain Kirk and crew actually rebuild the NX-01 Enterprise from Archer's time. Yes, and like a true Trekkie nerd, I was so happy to see the Archer-themed Enterprise was in this. Like, am I the only one who was happy to actually see an Archer-style Enterprise starship? It looked pretty cool. They managed to fix it. It was Emilia Clarke's kind of base where she lived on this stranded planet, but they eventually fix it and take them off the Doom Planet wasteland, and they fight Idris Elba. They take out his swarm with the power of rock. Yeah, I know, pretty ridiculous, but it was pretty fun, and they brought back the kick-ass song from the first movie. Through the power of rock, they managed to short-circuit all the swarm ships, and they all die. But, haha, Idris Elba survived a crash landing. The NX-01 Enterprise makes it on the Deep Space Station, and Kirk and Idris Elba have this epic fight through, like, the ventilation systems. He plans to unleash like this device by planting it in the core of the space station, which will unleash nanites that will devour living flesh, basically. Pretty odd, but also I did kind of like it as a callback to Nemesis. It is kind of the exact same super weapon, but updated with modern CGI. He wants to plant this device like in the core and kill all on the Deep Space Station for abandoning him and him getting back at Starfleet. Kirk and he have this cool fight where Idris Elba is eventually killed by his own device and farted out into space, where he dies. And Kirk realizes that after all this, he actually is happy being among the Starfleet crew because the Enterprise crew are his family, and they do fill that void. Emilia Clarke joins them. They all have like this big celebration party. They attend Leonard Nimoy / Spock's funeral because Nimoy died before this movie released. And everyone's all happy and all together, and we see the Enterprise is rebuilt for future sequels, which haven't happened yet. Yeah, beyond, it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. I will defend, it's a decent Star Trek movie. Yeah, I know, it's not a masterpiece up there with these awesome badasses, but you know, I actually don't mind rewatching again. It's just pure dumb fun, in a similar vein to Nemesis. Yeah, it's not a masterpiece Star Trek movie, and it doesn't really do anything new for the saga, but honestly, if you just like watching these characters in epic space action, I'd highly recommend it. Star Trek Beyond is definitely, and they've adapted over the basic drone of Into Darkness. So yeah, that pretty much completes our tier list. Alright, I'll go over it for you one last time if anyone new is just checking in. So, it's dead, Jim. Star Trek the slow motion picture because it's slow. And Section 31, it's more of Star Trek Discovery. That's all you need to know of why it belongs here. Garbage. Worst Star Trek movie ever. Then Trouble Tribble. We have Generations, which had fun ideas, but ended up boring and lame. Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, which ended up boring and ridiculous. Then Star Trek Insurrection, which is the third place from the last ones. Yeah, Linkara's right. It is a pretty bad movie because of the piss poor morals and storytelling behind our beloved Baku. Trouble Tribble. I thought it had good moments, but it is another bad film. None surprisingly made Miss the Nexus. Into Darkness almost did, but I do like it. None made it on here. Basic Drone, Into Darkness. I think it's okay. Yeah, I know it gets a lot of hate. I do agree it is the weakest of the Kelvin trilogy, but honestly, I do have fun with it, and I do put it on a lot more than these bottom 5 pieces of crap. But yeah, Into Darkness, it's alright. It's alright. Yeah, Ricardo Montalban is the best Khan. No question there. It's okay. Then they've adapted. Star Trek Nemesis and Beyond, they are not very good at being Star Trek movies, but they are dumb fun action movies. I have the time of my life rewatching these two. I will defend that they're definitely decent things to put on and enjoy if you just want to have fun with Star Trek. Nothing deep, philosophical, or a grade A masterpiece, but I will say they are awesome, and they would probably make my top 10 best Star Trek shows. And finally, Live Long and Prosper, which surprisingly earned a lot. Yes, these 6 movies are perfect. Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, hilarious. It is fun. It is very entertaining. Kirk and crew are on their A game, and it is solid proof that the Star Trek cast can carry on a Star Trek story without all the spaceships taking the spotlight. J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, it is fun. I will defend, it is fun. It is my very first Star Trek viewing experience in theaters, so yeah, there is a personal bias, but, I actually didn't think it was that bad as a reboot, and sadly, it might be one of J.J. Abrams' best movies ever, which says a lot about his directing, but yeah, this is fun. I will defend it. It's a cool, kick-ass Star Trek, and reminds everyone why Star Trek is awesome. Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. Underrated sequel. It is cool. Christopher Lloyd's a fun villain. I love Captain Kirk's character arc finally coming full circle in this movie. It is underrated in my opinion. The Search for Spock is the best of the odd number movies. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. A classic. All these 3 movies, these are the masterpieces for sure. This one is a marvel of great sci-fi storytelling. The Wrath of Khan is still a classic, and although I do have personal bias of the other 2, I won't deny it is a 11 out of 10 masterpiece. Who doesn't love Wrath of Khan? It did great things for Star Trek and sci-fi epics in general. Speaking of which, Star Trek VI. I love this movie. A great final farewell to William Shatner's Captain Kirk and his original team. This is what finales should be. A good, epic, last final stand, last epic adventure, epic battle, doing something new for the franchise. It brought the Klingons and humans together. I love the undiscovered country and hope more people discover its greatness. And top tier for me, First Contact. I know, not as good as Wrath of Khan, but First Contact is my #1 Star Trek movie. It is the best of Captain Picard, the best of the Borg, a borderline horror sci-fi movie, and has some of the greatest writing for both the comedy and dark, grim adventure. This is my #1 Star Trek movie, and it belongs up here with the rest of the S-tier masterpieces. So, yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up our list. Take a picture if you want to see the whole thing. I know it's kind of hard to fit because of the VHS posters here, but yeah, we'll block out section 31 so you don't remember that trash. But yeah, this is my ranking of the Star Trek saga, and we got a lot more good than bad, surprisingly. The bad are the ones you all know are epic fails, and the good are all the decent to masterpiece cinema. That completes my Star Trek ranking. Thank you all for showing up. I know Star Trek's not as popular as Star Wars, but to me, I really wanted to talk about this franchise too because it holds a special place in my heart. It's Wolfen time. Oh, hey, Emily, you're finally here just as we're about to wrap up. Yeah, we concluded all our Star Trek movies, got 5 stinkers, but a lot more good ones. Yeah, these are my favorite Star Trek movies. These are my decently awesome Star Trek movies. This one's okay. And we got the lame to god-awful down here. So, thank you for joining us. I hope you guys tune in next time. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, or just pop in to watch more here on Wolf Entertainment. I'm your host, Catastrophe, and I hope you all live long and prosper. Scotty, beam us out.